This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
It is 3 minutes after 10 and it is going to be uncharacteristically hot in the United Kingdom today. So I don't want to sound like your dad or indeed your mum, but be careful and please be aware. You probably wouldn't want to be standing in a field in Somerset in this kind of weather, but of course over the course of this weekend some people were. But I don't think that sunstroke or an unexpected rush of blood to the head could explain or excuse comments that are dominating the news agenda today. Is it worth beginning with some observations that are largely true? Okay. BBC dropped an enormous clanger at the weekend. It is an epic editorial failure, almost so inevitable that you could have seen it coming from space. It strikes me that to decide not to broadcast Kneecap for reasons I probably don't need to explain, and to broadcast instead their sort of effective support act when a cursory glance at their Instagram account would reveal that they were perhaps, I would say, at least as likely to say or do something inflammatory and possibly criminal, means that somebody should have been watching that in the way that Keith listens to this programme. Regular listeners may need an explainer here. So Keith listens to this programme, or at least he's supposed to, with his finger hovering like Billy the Kid's trigger finger over what we call the dump button. And that is not so much in case I say something out of order, although, but in case you do. And if you were to say something out of order, he hits the dump button, we lose a few seconds, go back a few seconds on the programme, and hopefully we avoid either causing enormous offence or committing an act of potential criminality, most obviously in the realms of sort of defamation, contempt of court, and libel. So somebody should have been hovering over that button, like Keith hovers over the dump button. I appreciate that's a fairly unfortunate juxtaposition of mental imagery and language, but that is what it's called. And he hovers over it like a hawk for 3 hours every day, barely takes time off to have a banana or a cup of tea or check his socials or all of the things that you might expect he'd be doing of a morning instead of hovering. So there is the first truth. The BBC have dropped an enormous clanger, and as is the way of such things, I predict that deputy heads will roll. It's the period of time as well, excusable. The first one that slips through or the second one that slips through, but to have it still up and to have it still broadcastable or watchable is inexcusable. That's an epic professional failure into which people will read whatever they want, but all you can say with certainty is that somebody in that chain of command, possibly somebodies plural, dropped an enormous clanger. The second thing you can say, I would argue, and may have to this morning with absolute certainty, is that the character who called for death to the IDF is, and you remember that the language I can use on this programme is policed by Ofcom, is a pillock of the very, very first order. And bear with me on this, because he may hold opinions that you are sympathetic to, but you can't call for the death of anybody from the stage of a public event, anybody being the operative point. There might be some wiggle room. Calling for the death of soldiers, you might think, is preferable to calling for the death of everybody from a certain ethnicity or religion or football team. And of course, I'd respond by pointing out that the IDF is made up of conscripts, largely. They have no choice, really, about being there, short of being imprisoned for objection, but they are also human beings, and calling for the death of soldiers who are but quite possibly following orders that you find repugnant is a stupid and dangerous thing to do. If I veer briefly into the realm of opinion rather than listing truths, then they set back the cause in many ways, in appalling ways, because the kind of people who would have described everybody on a Palestinian protest march as supporting terrorism are rubbing their hands with glee at this kind of thing. This is where we move into the realms of being able to hold two opinions in your head at the same time. So hideous humans, whose death I would never ever call for, either publicly or privately. Hideous humans who've tried from the very start to conflate support for the civilians in Gaza, support for the Palestinian people, are rubbing their hands with glee today at the prospect of somebody. It doesn't matter that you've never heard of him before, but they're rubbing their hands with glee today at the fact that one of their enemies has engaged in precisely the same conflation. So you can disapprove on an enormous scale of what the IDF is doing. And this morning, as you are almost certainly not aware, Israel has ordered evacuations in northern Gaza. So people who have already been shifted from pillar to post countless times have been shifted once again from the latest pillar to the latest post. We think that 23 people were killed on Sunday alone. So you could probably put the number of people killed since Bob Vylan undertook their set at Glastonbury in, I'd say, close to triple figures. 85 is the number that I've been able to conjure up or calculate. So ask yourself this, which is the direction in which we're moving. How do we end up talking more about one thing than the other? And I'm guilty of that as well, which is part of the reason why I'm so keen to ask the question. Other things that I think are, some things that are true. Many expert observers consider Israel's actions to have crossed the threshold for genocide. It is almost impossible to argue that they haven't committed war crimes. And there is no definition of ethnic cleansing, for example, that doesn't fit precisely the policies they have pursued in Gaza. The occupations in the West Bank are and remain completely illegal. The violence visited upon people who are living or trying to live peaceful lives on their land by illegal settlers is hideous and, incessant and egregious and all of those things. What else can we put on the list of things that's true? I don't know if you're aware of this. The BBC defended a comedian's comments about Jeremy Corbyn a few years ago after he said, or effectively said, that if you were to drop a bomb on Glastonbury, you'd be able to get him, because he was there at the time, and all of his fans as well. This is a comedian called Finn Taylor, who compared the former Labour leader to Bob Dylan and said, I only hate him so much because of his fans. People think that Bob Dylan's the greatest musician that ever lived, and you listen to some of it and it's awful, but then people are so dogmatic and say he's the greatest musician. People who like Corbyn, it's 200,000 people in the Labour Party that are fanatics, so all you've got to do next year is bomb Glastonbury. Hopefully Dylan's headlining, 2 birds, 1 stone. So in much the same way that when Joe Brand joked about battery acid and milkshakes, nobody took her seriously, nobody took him seriously. And unless there is a large crowd of people on the streets of Somerset who are currently toe-to-toe with members of the Israeli Defence Force, then some ludicrous parallels that I've seen this morning with the case of Lucy Connolly, who of course called for a pogrom against refugees and asylum seekers in state-funded accommodation, are among the stupidest things I've seen in public discourse. And I wouldn't even give them the time of day if they hadn't appeared on the front page of the Daily Telegraph, my late father's old newspaper. So if there is a rampaging mob of people poised to murder human beings and you offer them encouragement and support, your action is on a different planet entirely from somebody inciting violence against people on the other side of the world whom your audience is never likely to encounter or meet. I can't believe I need to explain that. I'm not even sure that I do, because anybody who doesn't understand is probably lying or pretending, but I'm happy to get that out there as well. So all of those things are true. Bob Vylan's comments on the stage were all of the things that his critics have described them. It was appalling hate speech. It was obnoxious and insightful. It was arguably anti-Semitic, because there won't be many non-Jews in the Israeli Defence Force, but there will be some. And of course, the distinction, the hair that you might want to split between calling for death to all Muslims or death to all Jews and death to members of an army, death to actual combatants, is, for me, probably pertinent, but not particularly. So why? Why are we like the way we are? Why are we like this? Humans. All of us. Let me read you this from David. Please, can you talk about what is happening in Gaza? What I heard over the weekend was horrific. Starving children, innocent Palestinians being used for target practice and being shot at while they queue for food. Aid stations being set up in places that are deliberately designed to be hard to get to. This is what David believes he has seen. Designed to draw out and displace the Palestinians even more. It's appalling. It needs to be stopped. There are also reports that some soldiers are receiving orders to kill. It's not being spoken about enough. The BBC has recently refused to air a documentary that addresses some of these issues. Fortunately, Channel 4 will be showing it, so I will watch it there. And I do. I think probably more than anywhere else except Channel 4. We talk about the plight of the Palestinian people in Gaza on this programme repeatedly and regularly. We can't do it every day. And we have already done it today. The idea of conducting a conversation about what happened in Glastonbury this weekend without talking about Gaza would be a bit like trying to have a conversation about cake without talking about flour or eggs or butter or icing. But it doesn't defend, excuse, and possibly even explain the actions of this character you had never, ever heard of before. I'd have a quick look at some of the people who are having a swing. I wonder if you can predict what position they'll be coming from. So you can't ever insult the IDF because they're all Jewish. Nice get out of jail free card, give your head a wobble, mate. No, of course you can insult their actions. You can critique their actions, mate. But you can't call for them all to be killed. And if you listen to the words that I actually said, some people will seek to describe and define it as an anti-Semitic action. I am not actually one of them, which is why I'm talking about why the enemies of the Palestinian people will be rubbing their hands with glee today. And you're proving my point for me, mate. Perhaps your head is the one most in need of a wobble, because this gives enormous succour and ammunition to the Daily Mail, the Daily Telegraph, the Suella Bravermans of this world, who are desperate to claim that everybody who wants innocent Palestinians to stop being killed is somehow supportive of Hamas or possessed of murderous bloodlust towards all Israelis, or on this occasion, just the soldiers. Didn't stop the Daily Mail, and this is a very pertinent point. It didn't stop the Daily Mail from describing it as a death to Israelis chance, whereas whether you consider it to be hair-splitting or not, it was death to Israeli soldiers that this, and I'll use the word once more, this pillock was calling for. 10:16 is the time. So why do we find it so much easier to talk about this than we do to talk about what's actually happening in Gaza? And to make it easier for you this morning, I'm going to include myself in that category. I sometimes at the weekend hear a story, stumble across a story, get hit over the head with a story and think, well, that's my 10 o'clock on Monday taken care of. And it's not. I mean, it's very much a first world problem, but, you know, the thought of turning up for work and not being able to find anything that we might find engaging together is, well, it focuses the mind somewhat, shall we say. So it's nice, for want of a better word, to encounter over the course of the weekend or the afternoon and evening on a weekday, something that I think will lend itself to our time together the following morning. And there is a little bit of that. You go and I think to yourself, oh, that's interesting. I better start marshalling my thoughts on this one because we will probably be talking about it tomorrow, which doesn't hold true for the latest killings in Gaza. That is a much harder mountain to climb. You have to work. I'm not asking for sympathy, God forbid, but it is not least because of the kind of messages that I feel I have a duty to look at least, rather than ignore. But the difficulty of having a nuanced, informed conversation when you've got people on one side claiming that you're a tool for the Israeli regime and under the others claiming that you're one of the biggest anti-Semites in history is I think there'd be something wrong with you if that washed off your back. Even if it's all Horlicks, there'd be something wrong with you if it washed off your back completely. So why do we find it so much easier to talk about an idiot at Glastonbury saying something stupid than we do about what is happening in Gaza? 0345 60 60 973. Why? What is it? And I'm looking for psychology. I'm looking for personal as well as political observations. I am guilty I can't sit here and say, why have they put this on the front page when they haven't put the latest deaths in aid queues? Because I know why they haven't. I know in my bones why they haven't. It's the same reason why my ears prick up when I see a story like this Bob Vylan story in a way that they don't when I hear another tale, when I see another statistic about innocent people in Palestine being murdered. So I'm happy to keep explaining why this character has done immeasurable harm to the cause of pro-Palestinian people in this country. But what I want you to tell me is why you think we find it so much easier, so much more inviting, so much more pleasant somehow to get stuck into this story of outrageous comments and carefully cultivated outrage in response than we do about the reality of what is, by most or by many accounts now, probably a genocide and certainly a series of war crimes. Why? How can people profess to be more offended by an idiot rapper shouting bilge from the stage in Somerset than they are by the continuing carnage in Gaza? It's extraordinary when you stop to think about it, right? But I'm guilty as well. I think that the situation in Gaza is 17 million times worse than anything that happened at Glastonbury over the weekend. But as a radio phone-in host, I'm probably at the apex of the process that I'm seeking to analyse today. Why do we find it so much easier to do this than we do to do that? Hit the numbers now, you will get through. 0345 6060 973. It's 20 past 10.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 21 minutes after 10, and I suppose I should have added, because this is very much in the realms of opinion rather than fact, but I think he should be arrested and charged. But I mean, part of the reasoning behind that involves charges that have already been brought against another musical act, so I can't go into too much detail because that case is live. But lest there is any doubt, pillock is the term I choose because if I go any further I get into trouble with Ofcom. But I certainly would I would expect Inspector Nacker to be knocking on Bob Vylan's door at some point today, and I suspect that Bob Vylan himself will be delighted about that. I just leave that hanging as we get stuck into the calls. John's in Leeds. John, what would you like to say?
Well, James, nearly completely agreeing with everything you said, because you aimed the key issue. Because you quite on the right thing. What's the real story here is the genocide, the war crimes being committed against the people in Palestine. And this is a side issue in comparison.
I suppose you could say this is happening here, and therefore it is of more relevance to people in London and Leeds than what is happening in Gaza or Israel.
Well, the point is, I think genocide and war crime should affect everybody. It's
not a great phone line, unfortunately, John. So I'd hate for you to think that it was what you were saying that was causing my impatience, rather than the medium that it's coming across. And I think I would also point out that the atrocities of October the 7th didn't suffer from geographical distance, when we quite rightly dedicated huge amounts of airtime and newsprint to describing those horrors in full effect. So phone line permitting, what's the psychological or why do you and me find it easier? Perhaps you don't, but the public in general finds it's easier to get its teeth into this story, which you describe as a sideshow, than it does into what you describe as a genocide?
Well, there's several reasons. Firstly, news by definition goes for the new. So anything that changes, anything that's different for goes. Secondly, as you carefully, wisely alluded to rather than stated, there is an issue with another band that was playing at Glastonbury, also has had allegations made against them, which are currently going to court. So it's actually a hot topic at the moment because there's already something newsworthy against it. And thirdly, sadly, not against your good self, who's been very strong on this, certain elements of the media don't want to talk about the genocide. They are quietly supporting it by suppressing the news of it. And therefore, they will jump on any sign that someone like the BBC has committed ostensibly to fair reporting has broken with their own rules and regulations.
And that is a very neat analysis, actually, and a media critique that you might have expected from the presenter of a programme rather than a caller to it. But you've reminded me of quite a few relevant points, and perhaps the most pertinent for people genuinely baffled and outraged by the apparent imbalance is sadly the passage of time, and we don't talk about Ukraine in anything like the way that we used to do, because I don't know whether normalised is quite the right word, but you just get inured to it. And so the latest deaths in Gaza, the latest calls for civilians to move, the orders, really, of evacuations from the Israeli Defense Force, and the claim, once again, that they're doing all of this, quotes, to eliminate terrorists and terrorist infrastructure, but 55,000 dead and counting, have just become... never background noise, God forbid, but they have become, we have become used to it, whereas this is new. This is new, and it is a, quotes, talking point. Just to point you towards what I mean when I won't overburden you with references to my inbox. So I read you the message already from the guy suggesting that I was... allowing accusations of anti-Semitism to silence all criticism of Israel. Now we've got the bloke accusing me of ignoring anti-Semitism. So the polar opposite position expressed, this chap's called Jamie, by someone listening to exactly the same radio programme. I never ceased to be fascinated by it. Two people listening to exactly the same radio programme. One of them thinks that I am excusing Israel's actions by buying into the idea that all criticism of Israel is somehow anti-Semitic, and one of whom thinks here that I am, quotes, completely ignoring the anti-Semitism issue and how calling for Jews and many other people in this country, how hateful it is. So two people both talking utter bilge, listening to the same radio programme and the same presenter and accusing him of doing the polar opposite thing. I point that out occasionally, just because obviously the massive majority of people listening to this programme may not need me to, but I'm here for everyone. Nick's in Ilford. Nick, what would you like to say?
Hi, I have to disagree with you, James, Good. About what this guy did was wrong, because I think at the very least it's highlighted the whole hypocrisy around this situation in Israel. I think if this guy had been chanting something like death to Russians, it wouldn't even be on a story. Nobody would be talking about it. But it's the politicians that seem to be screaming the loudest. And they're the exact ones that could actually do something about what's going on in Palestine or Israel.
I don't think he has advanced anybody's cause, Nick, and deep down, nor do you.
No, I think it's because I think he has, because I think people
you think he's drawn attention to something that you were already completely aware of and convinced of.
No, but I think there's a lot of people out there that don't know what to think. They don't know whether to think that. Obviously, you've got people that are out and out pro-Israel, people that are out and out pro-Palestine. But there's people in the middle, and there's a lot of people out there that are nervous to speak up. You spoke about why it's easier to get into this subject than the actual slaughter, and it's very simple. And it's the word anti-Semitic or anti-Jew. The minute this happened, most of the news reports I heard were saying anti-Jew statements. Even within the LBC news round, it was anti-Jew statements. There was nothing anti-Jew.
I don't think it was. I think it was anti-Israel.
No, very clearly anti-Jew.
Well, I haven't heard that myself, but to be honest, I'm not as plugged into the news over the weekend as I am during the week, so I'll let that pass. But I've certainly not seen that anywhere, except in opinion, except in texts and messages, and it's a view you have to at least acknowledge. The idea that if you call for death to members of the IDF, you are calling for death to a group made up almost entirely of Jews.
That might be the case, but it's also going to be made up because of their policies of people's serving.
You're not calling for them to be killed because they are Jewish. You're calling them to be killed because they are part of a group that you believe is engaged in genocide. But you're still calling for people to be killed.
Listen, let me just say, I don't want deaths to anyone. I want all these wars around the world to stop right now. The point is that it's been twisted to it happens to be Jewish within the IDF, but the main point that I wanted to make is if the exact same thing had happened and it happened to be a Russian organisation of soldiers, it wouldn't even have got the slightest peep from the media or anybody.
This is where the gulf between public opinion in this country and public discourse, as dictated and defined by the media, is, absolutely enormous. Because, the idea that your comparison is wrong because Russia illegally invaded Ukraine when Israel stands accused of breaking multiple laws, international laws, not just with regards to war crimes, but repeatedly and permanently with regards to illegal settlements. For an entirely objective observer, it would be very difficult to work out what the entirely objective criteria for criminality is here. And you think that this character has drawn attention to that imbalance, to that perceived hypocrisy. It's 10:30. Thank you. I'm enjoying this conversation, if that's the right word to use. But at the heart is a tacit admission that we all find it a bit easier to get stuck into this, even those of us who are persuaded that Israel's actions in Gaza have long been entirely indefensible and utterly unconscionable. Why? If you're an outrage merchant, I guess that question's quite easy to answer, but I don't think we are. Why do we as a society find it much easier to get exercised by ludicrous and probably criminal comments from a stage in Somerset than we do by, well, I've already pointed out how many people have died since this debate started. 10:31 is the time. Dominic Ellis has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
34 is the time, and I don't want to sound patronising, but, the importance of remembering that you can keep several conflicting thoughts in your head at the same time is never clearer than on mornings like this. You can find the comments made by Bob Vylan, a punk duo. I'm not a massive student of their work, I have to be honest. He got into trouble, I think, in Norwich a few years ago for directing abuse at a member of the audience, a female member of his audience that he thought had thrown an ice cube at him. But I think one of them is called Bobby Vylan, but the outfit is called Bob Vylan. So Bob Vylan is two people, Bobby Vylan is one person, and I now sound like a High Court judge asking, what is the Beatles? but there we are. So you can find his comments appalling, and at the same time find the actions of the IDF in Gaza appalling by a factor of several million. And the confusion about why at the moment in England, in the UK, we are more exercised by one appalling intervention than we are by one infinitely more appalling succession of interventions, culminating in the fact that I estimate about 85 people have been killed in Gaza since we all started having these debates on UK radio. I'm just interested in why. I'm not sitting here in judgment because I'm kind of guilty of it myself, although at least we're managing to keep both plates spinning. Do you know who Nissim Vettori is? Are you familiar with the name of Nissim Vettori? If you were in Israel, you'd know. He's the Deputy Speaker of Parliament there. He's the Deputy Speaker of the Knesset and a member of Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party. He has called, without any particular pushback, as far as I've been able to establish, for every man in Gaza, every Palestinian man to be killed. That is genocide. That is a member of Benjamin Netanyahu's party in Israel calling for genocide. He's called for the separation of women and children in Gaza and the execution of all the men. Who is innocent in Gaza, he asked. Civilians went out and slaughtered people in cold blood. We need to separate the children and women and kill the adults in Gaza. We are being too considerate. No one in the world wants the civilians in Gaza. Everyone is pushing them into Israel. They know that these are scum and subhumans. He also called for the wide-scale destruction of Jenin, which at the time was besieged by the Israeli military, tanks being sent into the West Bank city and refugee camp as recently as February, probably more recently. So there it is, the destruction of Jenin in the occupied West Bank. So he's literally calling for a genocide. This isn't whataboutery. This is speaking to the double standards and hypocrisy that many people in this country find increasingly hard to comprehend, let alone excuse. So a member of Benjamin Netanyahu's party calling it, and he's not the only one, calling explicitly for genocide. Why are we talking about a bloke no one had ever heard of saying stupid things on stage in Somerset? I don't know for sure, although the answers we've got so far have been helpful to say the least. Katie is in Paddington. Katie, what would you like to say?
Oh, hello there, James.
Hello, Katie.
I'm a little bit nervous.
It's only me.
I know. Yes, I agree with all your points this morning, and I too am disappointed that our government have really got this wrong. It's total imbalance, and just doesn't get as angry about the atrocities in Gaza that is going on about the artists in Glastonbury. And all they've done is elevate them anyway, so made them even more famous. But I wanted to put a question. The artist, he used the word death to the IDF.
Yes.
Maybe I interpret it as it means the end to the IDF. Perhaps I'm being naive, I don't know. But, when IDF soldiers post hundreds of videos, their own videos, of trophy violence, wearing women's underwear, posing with horrible images of what they've done in Gaza, proud of what they've done in Gaza. I mean, they are the ones who are violent. I don't call the artists violent. And I think the other point I wanted to make is that what a waste of taxpayers' money calling for the police to investigate these artists. We've got better things to use our money on than wasting taxpayers' money on these artists.
I think with all sort of potential incitement, the thinking behind prosecutions is deterrent. It is to ensure that we don't spend the entire summer hearing people speak from festival stages, escalating, because the next one will have to be even more outrageous than the last one to get the same levels of attention. So we don't agree about everything. I think that there is a case for the involvement of the police here, and I completely disagree with you about it being some sort of rhetorical call for the end of the IDF. But you could make your case in court. You could make that case semantically. And Brennan's been in touch to say that Katie is saying exactly what I've been shouting at the radio all morning. So well done to her. But disagreement is healthy, I suppose, and certainly your recollections of footage that you've seen posted online tallies with mine. Some of this stuff is disgusting, although not as disgusting as the words I just read from the Deputy Speaker of the Knesset calling for a genocide of all Palestinian men, and yet here we are talking about an obscure rapper.
I know, and I mean, they call Palestinians vermin. The last point I will make, because I'm sure you've got many callers.
Men never say that, Katie. Why do men never say that to me?
Well, I just wanted to say that Palestinian people are human beings, so I can see why young people and society across the world are getting very, very angry about this issue. Nothing's being done, and they're human beings just like you and I, and that, people should not be being murdered. And if they kill Palestinians, they're actually killing us. It's the same. Why are we different to them? We're all one. We're one species. We're the human race. And
maybe you've answered the question yourself. Maybe part of the I don't like drawing a distinction between the public and the public discourse, but I'm afraid I have to again, because I'm part of the second group, not really the first group, and maybe even on this programme we kind of don't wade into this issue in the way that we might, because we are operating in a universe where that hierarchy has sort of been imposed upon us subconsciously, that one life is not worth the same as another life because of an accident of birth. However hard we rail against it, and however often I point out that I reject utterly that worldview, maybe the media has sort of been gaslit into it in some way.
Yeah, I think you're right. I just think that we've lost sight that actually we're all the same. They're our brothers and sisters, and our brothers and sisters are being murdered right now, every day. And governments get annoyed about artists. When you think of it, put it into perspective, it's pathetic. Let's do something really useful and let the government start calling out what Israel are really about and what they're doing. But they won't, because they've got a vested interest, which is the scary thing.
Well, which is the status quo and I suppose history. Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, has called for Israel to get its house in order, but I know that you would consider that to be a mealy-mouthed and inadequate response to the ongoing carnage that you describe. And you describe it so well, I hope you don't mind me saying that. It touched a lot of people. David puts it most simply. He writes, thanks, Katie. Shah writes, great points from Katie there. 100% agree. Gregor, this lady is very right. Dictator Starmer has no right to tell us what songs artists should sing and what sort of lyrics should be in the song. No, well, that would be a great point, Gregor, if the lyrics had been in a song, or if indeed the artist had sung it. But neither of those things are true. Someone's managed to miss this story, but still equip themselves with a pungent opinion. She's talking about what most people agree with, other than... Nick, this is Neil making a point that I think really reflects, other than a deluded cohort of LBC callers whose support for Israel seems to be complete and encompass support for genocide. Steve, I think, goes a different way. So you're giving the incitement of violence credibility by quoting other people who incite violence. This is Great Britain, who gave prison sentences for the same charge. So, well, there haven't been any charges yet. So Glastonbury was okay because of events happening thousands of miles away. Here it is, two-tier justice, writes Steve in Guildford. So, again, I said I didn't think I needed to explain it, but up pops Steve, so I do. If there were currently a rampaging mob of murderous civilians on the streets of Soho and the IDF were hiding in hotels, and somebody came on this programme and called for the rampaging mob to set fire to those hotels, then parallels with the London riots and with the case of Lucy Connolly, Steve, would indeed be pertinent and well worth making. But unless you're aware of an extraordinary news development that's unfolded since we came on air, then they are not. And if you can't see that, it's a you problem, not a justice system problem.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 10:47 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. This from Owen. Hello, James. I would suggest that Bob Vylan's call was death to the organisation of the IDF as an entity. Katie made this point and an awful lot of you agree with it. I currently don't. I mean, you wouldn't use the word death unless you were trying to conjure up something rather more bloody than pacifism or opposition to military might. As I say, I disagree. To your second point, the West has been conditioned to prioritise Israeli pain and death over anyone else's. I, as a black man living in England, have been conditioned to empathise with the dominant culture, and it wasn't until realisation and reprogramming that I was able to balance my actions, writes Owen. Matt, meanwhile, writes, because what happened at Glastonbury reflects what is happening here. You want psychology, that's it. It's very, very scary watching how the crowd lapped it up, which is Matt's position. Dave points out that if Bob Vylan had chanted death to the Wagner group, the Russian mercenaries, no one would bat an eyelid. And another Matt writes, I think he has raised positive awareness as well. You're totally wrong about once a year, James, and this is one of those times. Quick question. Two questions for you, actually. Which of these stories is true? A former Israeli defense minister with an international warrant out for his arrest last week co-wrote a column in the Times of London newspaper urging the US to get stuck into Iran. Took about 2 weeks ago before Trump made those moves. So a man currently wanted under an international warrant for alleged war crimes was commissioned by Rupert Murdoch's Times to write a column. Or is this story true? The Jerusalem District Court has now cancelled this week's hearings into Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's long-running corruption trial, accepting a request from Netanyahu that was made citing diplomatic and security grounds, from which it's hard not to conclude that if you want to avoid popping up in court, drop some bombs on Iran. and then claim that the security and diplomatic situation is far too fraught for you to face long-running charges of corruption. So which of those two stories do you think is true? That Rupert Murdoch's Times of London commissioned an actual sort of wanted man, a man with an international warrant out for his arrest for alleged war crimes, or that Netanyahu's corruption trial is being called off because of the diplomatic and security grounds, arguably precisely created by his own aggression towards Iran. Yeah, well done. They're both true. But here we are, talking about a rapper. Sam's in Cambridge. Sam, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise.
I always like to listen to you because you make the truth so simple and so clear.
Wow.
Unfortunately, not a lot of people listen. Now,
we're doing all right. We're doing okay. I mean, everyone's a critic. Carry on, Sam.
And I really do agree with Katie, who spoke before, because she spoke very, very good words. Now, I'm talking out of my heart on this situation. I don't agree with the words that chap who has never heard of him before said at the show. I don't agree with the words. However, the answer to your question, why it's easier to talk about like this rather than talk about Gaza, is because talking about him and condemning him, as I said, I don't agree with the words, but condemning him, it appears as if we're standing by Israel, as we are standing on the shoulder with Israel. This man attacked them, and therefore we're standing with them. Talking about Gaza, you're criticizing the Israelis, and nobody is allowed to do that. Even Trump possibly have to think twice before he does it. And because
we've heard several people today describe what they're doing as genocide. I've spoken to Kenneth Roth recently, the former head of Human Rights Watch, who used that word and has persuaded me of its appropriateness in these circumstances. We're fairly comfortable describing it as ethnic cleansing. If you want to talk about the murder of innocent Palestinians, then you're perfectly free to do so. People being shot in aid queues, aid workers being murdered in cold blood, and the truth only emerging because we found a phone in the pocket of one of the dead people. I think I'm criticising Israel, Sam.
No, I don't. What I'm saying is, at the end, you might.
But you said no one can.
No. I've said, okay, I'm talking about the people who make a difference.
Okay.
Like governments or the EU or the States, or somebody who would say, right, enough is enough. We need to sort it, because if what's happening in Gaza happened in any country in the world, sanctions would have been stop weapons, stop. Nothing except talk and sympathy while people are dying on a daily basis.
I mean, you make a valid point, but you also remind me of something else. I don't want it to become yet another cliche on the programme that I return to again and again, but the gulf between public opinion and media-managed public discourse is huge. Because, I mean, if you were in Ireland, for example, following this story, you would not say what you are saying. You would not believe that politicians have been querulous or silent or cowed into failing to object. Plenty of other European countries. When you look at the numbers at the United Nations Council, the world is against what Netanyahu is doing in Gaza, but living in Britain, you just wouldn't know it.
But has that stopped the Israelis killing the Palestinians innocent on a daily basis? Doesn't matter what we say, what we think, what we do. The man there, Netanyahu, he's got the green light. He can do. In fact, he said it. I can do what I like.
Yes.
And that's it. I mean, I've got people who live in the West Bank. They're terrorized in the night if they hear knocks of who is going to come to settlers, because we hear a lot about Gaza, but although we hear a little bit about the West Bank, but not enough. Not enough.
And that is why it almost releases a pressure cooker when something like this happens, something crass and ugly and very simple to process. And we can all come out and say, that's outrageous, that's disgusting. And no one is going to accuse us of being racist or of being anti-Semitic or of being any of those things. So it's almost as if we get all our feelings out there directed at this idiot rapper and don't go near the really complicated and difficult stuff.
That's right. I mean, you know, you haven't been to that. I don't know whether you've been to the region or not.
No, I haven't.
The amount of settlements has been going during the years, because I think the Israelis believe one day they might have to be sitting around the table and talk about a Palestinian state or whatever. And at that time, they'll say, well, it's too late because there's no land left because the settlements are surrounded in all the West Bank.
Well, I think that Benjamin Netanyahu articulated that ambition to Max Hastings, the newspaper editor and author, some years ago. It's again something we've returned to a few occasions on the programme, and I mean, I haven't seen anyone take it as far as you have with actually laying out what you think the plan may be. But if that were to be the plan, then it would be advanced, wouldn't it, by the nature of media-managed public discourse in this country and, to a certain extent, the United States of America. I'll remind you of those words, actually. This is Max Hastings, Daily Telegraph editor, Daily Mail columnist, historian. At Bibi Netanyahu's dinner table in Jerusalem, I listened with crawling dismay to him talking about the future of his country. In the next war, if we do it right, we'll have a chance to get all the Arabs out, he said. We can clear the West Bank, sort out Jerusalem. He joked about the Golani Brigade, the Israeli infantry force in which so many men were North African or Yemenite Jews. They're okay as long as they're led by white officers, he grinned. But hey-ho. How awful was Glastonbury, eh? And again, if you're just tuning in, I sometimes forget that I need to clarify. BBC have dropped an enormous clangor here, and the comments made upon the stage were, to my mind, almost certainly criminal. But you can hold two thoughts in your head at the same time. For example, what he said on the stage was nowhere near as bad as what Bibi Netanyahu said to Max Hastings back in the day, or indeed what the Deputy Speaker of the Knesset and a member of Netanyahu's party said publicly as recently as last February when he called for a genocide. There's no need to stick that in quotes or use carefully measured legal language. He literally called for a genocide. He called for all Palestinian men in Gaza to be executed. Oh, and the former defence minister, who is wanted by the International Criminal Court on war crimes allegations, he got commissioned by Rupert Murdoch's Times in London to write an article a fortnight ago. Oh, and they've postponed the corruption trial back in Jerusalem of Benjamin Netanyahu because of the diplomatic and security situation in which he finds himself. Now, why might he be in a fraught diplomatic and security situation at this point in Israeli history? Rhetorical question. Thank you, Sam. David's in Bath. David, what would you like to say?
Hi there, James. I've actually seen Bob Vylan as a support act to Biffy Clyro. This was probably about 4 years ago in 2021.
Any good?
They're actually really good. It's not my kind of music. Obviously, I was there to see Biffy Clyro, and
yes,
the vibes are completely different. But it was... I mean, kind of what I was talking to a producer about just now was that it was at the kind of same time as the whole the Sarah Everard case and
yes,
BLM and all of this kind of thing. And even then, they were a support act, but they were getting the whole crowd to carry on with their chants. And I think I had a look at their set list just before I called up as well that night. I saw them because, unfortunately, my memory's not that good. But there were songs like Pulled Pork, and I think you can kind of understand where a song like that is alluding to. Other ones, which is, I think it was called like, So You Think This Country Is Yours, Yeah. Songs like this, which are obviously highly political. So I kind of agree with you to a point where it's to replace them instead of Kneecap. Obviously, everyone knowing, you know,
they were on before Kneecap. But they were broadcast and Kneecap were not. So once they've made that decision without doing the basic research that you've just done, looks like an editorial failure of an unbelievable
This
scale.
is where I then went on to talk to your producer because she said, you know, what do we want to talk about when I'm talking to yourself about in terms of how does this answer the question? And I kind of thought, you know, well, this is, in a way, it's part of a right-wing narrative that wants to attack things like Glastonbury itself. It wants to attack the BBC despite the BBC conforming to a more right-wing populist agenda. I mean, you simply have to look at what the panel for Question Time was last week, and I don't think there was a single Lib Dem or Green Party member yet. We've got Reform on every week. Reform, I think, have as many MPs as the Green Party, yet you hear nothing from the Greens. So in terms of kind of impartiality, it's already there, even on the kind of the woke BBC agenda.
That's what I mean by the media-defined public discourse. I don't have much beef with what you describe. It's always slightly more complex than programs like this can allow or accommodate. But the idea that that this particular story is manna from heaven for the people that you describe, because if you've spent 2 years conflating everybody who's saying please stop killing Palestinian babies with the Hamas terrorists, murderers and kidnappers, then you're going to be aware on some level that you're morally bankrupt. And someone like this character comes along and, in your mind, sort of proves your point for you.
I do think it's always ironic as well. On kind of further from that, we're talking about things like GB News and that, who are, they pride themselves in free speech warriors, I kind of seem to call them.
Well, they'll be sticking up for this guy then.
They're not speaking up for him, they're attacking him.
Oh.
And obviously, it's like you might disagree or agree with his points. I kind of obviously see from your point that you completely disagree.
With his choice of language. Yeah. I don't think I don't think you can condemn the actions of IDF in strong enough terms. I'm not sure the English dictionary contains the words to do that. But or indeed the Deputy Speaker of the Knesset calling for a genocide. I don't think you can. But you don't say what he said on stage at Glastonbury. Whether you think it should face criminal charges or not, but not least because of what you've just described, because of the ammunition that it gives to some of the most unpleasant contributors to public discourse. It kind of allows them to see, I told you, those 4 people waving Hamas flags in a crowd of 100,000, they're the ones that are defining what the 100,000 people stand for. The 4 idiots in a massive crowd. Let's please ignore the valid points that the massive crowd is making and the compassion that they're calling for, and focus instead on those idiots over there. And he's become that idiot. I can't say through no fault of his own, but as you say, the BBC should have seen that coming, given a cursory reading of his track record, of their track record. 11:01 is the time, and it is a story that is going to continue to garner infinitely more coverage than the people killed in Gaza since that performance, than the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu's corruption trial has once again been postponed, the fact that the former defence minister, wanted by the International Criminal Court on war crime allegations, is a columnist of sorts in the London Times, in Rupert Murdoch's London Times, being commissioned to write about that kind of thing, and on it goes. You can understand why many people are profoundly confused about what the hierarchy is here, the hierarchy of importance, or even the hierarchy of value. But none of that makes this stupid intervention on the stage in Glastonbury any less stupid. That's my view. A lot of you disagree with it. Not all of you, happily, but plenty. 11:02 is the time.
James O'Brien on LBC.
5 minutes after 11, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, talking about that gulf between public discourse and or between the public and the media-curated public discourse. I just wanted to double-check on whether I was remembering the statistics correctly. And this goes back to the beginning of this month, and so it's pretty up-to-date, and I can't imagine things have improved since. Just between crossing all European countries, so you kind of take an average, which is why the figure is between 6 and 16% across 6 Western European publics. The figure that think Israel has responded proportionately in Gaza is between 6 and 16%. The overall favourability towards Israel is the lowest it has been since YouGov started measuring in 2016, which means it's even lower than it was before the 7th of October attacks, and something that we both predicted and mourned on. Well, I mourned it. I think it's a tragedy for everybody involved, but we certainly predicted it at times when others were absolutely adamant that this was not going to be the case at all, and that you had to trumpet your support for anything that they were going to do in Gaza from the highest rooftops. Anyway, on we move, although I suspect we'll be back. 7 minutes after 11 is the time. It's time for one of our regular visits to the world of GPT, or at least the world of AI. The number of... this really stopped me in my tracks, actually. The number of new entry-level jobs has fallen by nearly a third since the launch of the artificial intelligence tool ChatGPT in November of 2022. Now, there'll be other reasons why the number of entry-level jobs is falling, a whole bunch of them. But this has to be part of it, I think. It would be very hard to claim that it isn't. So graduate roles, apprenticeships, internships and junior positions with no degree requirement have fallen by 31.9%. They now account for just about a quarter of the overall jobs market, when in 2022 it was 3 or 4 points higher than that. So this would mean that AI is already taking jobs from human beings. BT said in May 2 years ago that it would replace 10,000 jobs with artificial intelligence by the end of the decade, most obviously in call handling and network diagnostics. Every now and then, I mean, we've been doing this pretty much since November 2022 when it launched, haven't we? And it was quite funny when it launched. And people would send me ChatGPT's attempts at doing the kind of monologue that I start most hours with on LBC, and they were a bit rubbish. And then we came back to it every 3 or 4 months, and it reached the point where even I was thinking, God, that's good. That could almost be me. And I suspect that we're going to start removing the word almost from that conversation at some point. I used to say with absolute certainty that a job like this would be fine. I'm not even sure of that anymore. I just want to share a quick statement with you that has been released by the BBC in the last few minutes. Millions of people tuned in to enjoy Glastonbury this weekend across the BBC's output, but one performance within our live streams included comments that were deeply offensive. The BBC respects freedom of expression, but stands firmly against incitement to violence. The anti-Semitic sentiments expressed by Bob Vylan were utterly unacceptable and have no place on our airwaves. We welcome Glastonbury's condemnation of the performance. And they then go on to detail precisely what happened. The team were dealing with a live situation, but with hindsight should have pulled the stream during the performance. We regret this did not happen. In light of this weekend, we will look at our guidance around live events so we can be sure teams are clear on when it is acceptable to keep output on air. I presume that was put together by a human being, but we are moving quickly towards a world in which it might be safer to leave it up to ChatGPT or to AI. So that hadn't occurred to me until I started talking to you. How often does that happen? It's not like I spend my life going around doing monologues or thinking deeply enough about issues to justify a monologue. Imagine how boring that would be, even for me. But until I started talking to you then, I hadn't realised that something had shifted inside me. To go in the space of, November 22, 23, 24, 2.5 years, give or take, from thinking, no, I never thought, this is all a bit of a flash in the pan and it'll never catch on. I never did that, but I did think some of the warnings we were receiving of just how far-reaching the impact of AI or ChatGPT and similar things would be was exaggerated. And I would have said, I wonder when that shifted. I wonder when I started thinking subconsciously, because I've only just realised that I'm thinking it consciously, that actually I could see how they could even do my job at some point in the not too distant future. Just need to get whoever it is doing my voice on dead ringers, program that into ChatGPT, and they can listen back to every program I've ever done and predict with some confidence exactly how I would respond in any given situation. Why on earth would you? That's why I do the segues. That's why I do the tangents. That's why I do the digressions. Keeps it authentic. You see, can't go off on a mad one, can you? If you're ChatGPT, well, of course you can. Am I future-proof? I'm future-proofing my role by starting a conversation about ChatGPT and just veering off into a conversation about biscuits or something completely random. But that's just how my brain works, and I'm sure ChatGPT will be able to emulate that at some point. So I don't want to make it all about me. Although, now that I've said it out loud, I am somewhat worried about how long it would be before I might be realistically replaced by ChatGPT. I just want to know what's happening in your world. Whether you're as surprised as I am. Actually, there's not much point ringing me if you are as surprised as I am. I want to know why you're not as surprised as I am, to learn that the number of entry-level jobs is plummeting. How do we know how much of this is down to the fact that some of these jobs will now be done by computers? 0345 6060 973. Don't tell anybody I said this, but I'm not even sure that using the word computers in that context was the correct word to use. It is still the correct word to use, isn't it? Isn't it? You see, ChatGPT wouldn't... I see ignorance. That's another way of future-proofing my role. I'll pretend not to understand things. Spoiler alert, I really don't understand them. But ChatGPT would understand them, because all it has to do... So the way to future-proof my role, go off on mad tangents and sound ignorant. Yeah, that may not be the best plan I've ever had. 13 minutes after 11 is the time. How much of this do you think is down to ChatGPT, and what is going on in your world? So there's two fairly straightforward questions. Yeah, you're right. I am describing the weave, what Donald Trump calls the weave. Is that going to future-proof me from ChatGPT? It's not really the weave, because I don't claim that the whatever tangent it is I'm going off on is somehow relevant to the conversation I started. How it's completely irrelevant. Trump, I think, thinks that he can see things no one else can see. But Mystery Hour, couldn't do Mystery Hour without ChatGPT. I think you're right. And Chris points out that AI could never self-promote as relentlessly as I do. How dare you, Christopher? That's just rude, Christoph. 14 after 11 is the time. How much do you reckon, seriously, if you're running a company, be honest with me, how many entry-level jobs do you reckon you've now done away with because AI can do them instead? 0345 6060 973. Question number 2 is, what's it doing in your world? Do you think you can surprise me? I am not up to my neck in this stuff. Neither am I completely ignorant. Everything I know, I owe to you. Sound like Bryan Adams now. Everything I do, everything I owe to you. Any understanding at all I have of AI, and ChatGPT in particular, is down to you, because you go further than the stories that I use to start the conversations. So you will be able to tell me what is happening in your world. So the opinion is about how many entry-level jobs it is essentially rendering redundant. The experience is, what is it actually doing in your world? And the best calls there will be the ones that surprise me. You'll say, oh, it's doing this for me now, James. Or it's doing that for me now, James. One of the early calls that made my eyebrows head heavenwards was simply a fellow with a gym, I think, in Brighton, who had struggled with his advertising and needed more clients to come to the gym. He got ChatGPT to do him a Facebook advert, and it worked like a dream. I mean, it literally worked. It pushed buttons that he had, as a human, failed to push. And that was about 18 months ago. So things will be infinitely better by now than they were then. So how many of these jobs? Tell me what jobs it's doing in your company, and how many entry-level jobs you think it's doing away with. And if you really, 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 really know your stuff, you can have a go at telling me whether it's ever going to replace me. 0345 6060. I'm just going to have to counsel Keith. Don't worry, mate. I'm not going anywhere. It's all right. It's all right. I've got a contract and everything. Even if the technology was invalid. No. I'm sorry. I should have had a trigger warning there. I'm going nowhere, mate. It's all good. Stop flicking V's at me. It is 16 minutes after 11. And not too much on that. But if you really, really, really know your stuff, then how long before ChatGPT can do this? This is ChatGPT on LBC. I bet they'd hit the junctions on time. It's 11:16.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 18 minutes after 11. Abigail points out these days you can't even call AI a computer without someone getting offended. But the question I'm interested in is, how many jobs is it already doing? What's going to happen next? You can have a crack at that if you want. And when will my time come? First they came for the entry-level jobs. And they came for the radio presenters. There was no one left to talk about it. It is 18 after 11, and that is the question that we're looking at. The massive decline in entry-level jobs in areas I'd imagine like call handling and network diagnostics is something of an alarm call, isn't it? Something of an alarm call. Let's start with Neil, who's in South Hams. Neil, what would you like to say?
Yeah, good morning, James. I don't think particularly these jobs are solely because of AI. And AI is quite a large blanket you're covering everything with.
Well, this is, I should clarify. Let me clarify, because this is about ChatGPT kicking off in November 2022, and a measure of how many entry-level jobs have disappeared since then. So the number of entry-level jobs has fallen by nearly a third since it was launched. So it's the people that have done the research that are setting the parameters of the conversation. And the head of data at the company that commissioned it says that it is now a major factor in the shrinking entry-level job market.
Yeah, okay. So you're talking about large language models. No, so not... This is what I was saying about AI being a large blanket. Large language models like GPT and Anthropic and all the rest of them, they are not. They don't all have the same capabilities. So I use Anthropic for coding, for help me with my website. So if I write 400 lines of code and I miss a colon out or a comma, it won't work properly. I can give it to Claude and say, find the error, and it will do. It'll come back to me.
And what would you have done previously?
If I was stuck, I would have to go through it.
So that would be human. That would be man hours.
Line by line. Yeah, and that obviously then adds to a build cost if I'm building a website or if I'm building a plugin. So it's quicker. It's a tool which it makes my business more efficient in that respect. But if you go to it and say, right, I would like you to build this using these languages, and it comes back to you, it will take you 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 attempts to get it remotely close to what you need.
For now.
And you still need the human. Yeah, for now. Yeah, I'm not saying what the state of play is now is what it's going to be in 5 years' time or even 2 years' time. It won't be. It will be different. And in which case, the people who've done this research might have a case in that time frame. They don't now.
No, because I think you're doing what I do. I think
it's not good enough.
No, I think you're doing what I do. I think we both have jobs that we don't think could currently be done by ChatGPT, but that doesn't mean there aren't lots of jobs that can currently be done by the large language, whatever you just said.
Yeah, large language models. Yeah,
large language models.
So it's like, So I believe they fed your book to Meta fed your book to their AI model. It was one of the 900 that they did. Did you not know about this?
Which book?
One of your books. I think it was your last one.
What?
So they trained their AI.
It's outrageous. Do I get any money?
No, you don't.
No one tells me anything. How do you know that and I don't?
I read it somewhere. I'm pretty certain I read it somewhere.
Unbelievable. Carry on.
So at the moment, there's a case going to court with Anthropic, which is partly invested in by Microsoft and Google.
Yeah.
And the judge has backed Anthropic over the use of them doing what they did with your book. So feeding their books, these people's books, to their large language models to learn.
I'll tell you what, when I said let's not make it all about me, that's all gone a bit wrong, hasn't it? I think it was it not was it not Loathe Thy Neighbour? Wasn't it one of my very early efforts? That I think that rings a vague bell.
I can't remember.
But it doesn't matter, does it? No one cares.
I can't remember.
Not even me.
No, but people do care, and this is the problem.
No one cares which book it is. That's all I'm saying. Not which, but the point of principle and copyright and intellectual property that matters. I understand the importance of that.
Yeah.
But it needs to be fed. It's like Number 5. Do you remember the film Short Circuit?
Yeah.
It needs to input, more input.
Yeah, absolutely. So the judge in the Anthropic case, which is currently in court, he's drawn a line in the fact that it doesn't matter about the copyrighted material. He objects to the fact they've used pirated books to feed the large language model. That's what he's objecting to. Yeah. My personal view is I'd object to the copyright infringement.
Yeah.
That's what I would. But at the moment, I don't think that there's such a massive.
Again, I'm coming back to the same point. No, I know you don't, and nor do I. But I'm closer to thinking that there was. So we need now to find people who have got businesses and who have got people. I mean, you save those man hours. If this was a bigger operation, then those man hours that you save by getting a large language model to look at your code, that could be a job. It could certainly be, a shift, couldn't it, for a freelancer in a bigger outfit. So I think you're right and wrong at the same time. I suspect we both are. Every time we do this, someone does this, but it only works depending upon what subject you choose. I'm not talking about Neil now. I'm talking about Ellis. So I'm getting ChatGPT to do one of my monologues. You ready? This is quite good. This is on the plight of the bumblebee. I was walking through a park the other day. Nothing fancy, just one of those little city ones tucked between the high streets and the new builds. And I saw this child, 5 or 6 years old, absolutely mesmerised by a bumblebee. Not scared, not swatting it away, just watching. Curiosity in its purest form. And I stood there for a moment and I thought, we've forgotten that tiny, fuzzy creature, barely the size of a conker, is responsible for keeping this whole miraculous thing we call life ticking over. Is that really putting into ChatGPT, do me a James O'Brien monologue about a bumblebee? That's really good, That's really good. 11:24 is the time. Jack's in Elstree. Jack, what can you tell us?
Good morning, James. How are you?
Very well. Well, I'm a bit worried now, Jack. I'm trying to think of something poetic to say about bumblebees that would leave ChatGPT in my dust.
So, the person you were talking about just before, that's actually me. It is taking jobs. Well, not my job. I'm the one who's kind of making it my own.
Yes.
But essentially, what I wanted to talk about was the new kid on the block in AI. It's called agentic AI.
Right.
And the main thing that it does is you can have it in your code editor. So a code editor is what, junior developers or senior developers, software developers will write their code in. And what you can do is you can say, make me a program that does X, and this AI will just do all of it for you. It will look through all the code that you've already got, or just generate it completely de novo. And what that means is that junior developer roles, especially, they're basically gone now. So there's no need for it. So in quite under-resourced companies or teams, they will start using agentic AI instead of having to wait 3 months or a ticket to come through with a junior software developer. So
I understand almost all of this, which is a credit to your clarity. So you're in the similar field to the last fella, but a little bit further down the AI route.
Well, I'm actually not in computers at all.
Oh, okay.
I'm actually in scientific publishing.
Right.
I won't say who I work for, but I've been using it to essentially automate certain processes in my teams. It's a very small team.
And that is doing away with that. Is that doing away with the need for humans already?
Absolutely, yeah. So even cause I'm a medical writer by my job role,
yes.
And I know we won't be hiring any more junior medical writers under me because I'm automating whatever that we would want them to do.
But how will we ever have senior medical writers in the future?
Well, I think that will just be me or anyone who is currently, we're not on the best salaries in the world.
No, I know, but how will there ever be another you if the ladder that you came up no longer exists?
Well, this is the thing. I think it's almost quite ironic that the ladder it's not even me who's pulling it up. The ladder's just going up. Yeah, it's just going up.
It's like a video game where the ladder dissolves as you climb it, so you can't go back down again. But that doesn't answer my question. Who will be the senior people of the future if we're doing away with the need for the juniors?
I think there will still always be senior people, but that's going to create a problem because there's not going to be the younger people with the skills when obviously the senior people start to retire. There's not going to be younger people there with the skills to be able to command the AI or do what needs to be done necessarily.
What other jobs might we... just in the realms of speculation, what other jobs do you think are approaching obsolescence?
It's going to be things that require very monotonous, autonomous things that a computer can do already. So, for example, spreadsheets, Word documents, PowerPoints, that sort of thing, the non-human things. So it will give more time for the human tasks, like interacting with, clients or partners.
So
or whatever.
So it may not. It may not have such a profound change upon numbers, just upon what those numbers do with themselves. That's a great call, Jack. Thank you. Lawrence takes up a similar theme about what it might do. We'll look at that. Sure, I'll tell you why I just did that noise. I bet you're thinking a conspiracy. I just noticed that someone said, please don't read out my name. And I was just about to read out their message. So that was live. See, ChatGPT wouldn't do that. It's the mistakes you're going to come for. I'm still a little bit distracted by this bumblebee. I have to tell you, it's really... the problem is I sound really arrogant now, don't I? Or conceited. If I say this ChatGPT version of one of my monologues is really quite beautiful and poetic. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, why wouldn't it be, James? But I'm thinking, gosh, really? You think that was me? Oh, I'm quite flattered. It's not a symbol. It's not a cartoon. It's not a background hum at a picnic. It's a keystone of our very existence. And yet here we are in 2025, watching their numbers collapsing, whole populations disappearing. It's coming up to 11:30. Dominic Ellis is here with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
A good actor doesn't sound like they're reading. I do, because I'm not a good actor. So you can tell my monologues are Well, they need some ums. There you go, Keith. You're taking notes because we've got another one now. This is from Jack, who has asked AI to come up with a James O'Brien-style monologue about the plight of the bumblebee that outdoes a real James O'Brien monologue he's come up with to outdo a pre-existing AI James O'Brien monologue about the plight of the bumblebee. Are you still with me at the back? This is called The Bumblebee Reckoning. So I'll try and act this one so it doesn't sound like I'm reading. You can always tell when people are reading. It's one of my rules, never read on the radio. But it's only one of my rules. It doesn't mean people who do read on the radio are doing it worse than I am. You know what really gets me? See, already you can tell somehow something weird happens, doesn't it? It's why the best actors. You know what really gets me? And I mean really gets me more than Brexit, more than Boris, more than billionaires in bunkers dodging taxes while tweeting about grit and graft. It's this. The bumblebee, that soft, bumbling miracle of nature, a creature so improbably engineered it looks like it shouldn't even fly. And yet it does. Or rather, it did. That's probably better than the last. I'm finished. How old am I? 53. How long before ChatGPT can present this programme? Weeks, months, years? Tomorrow? Daniel's in Watford. Daniel, what would you like to say?
Just clear up a few things, I suppose. One of them is that it's AI is coming for your job. You want to clear that up, it's already come for it and taken a lot already. But not exactly how people think.
Go on.
For example, if I've got two people in front of me, let's say a typist, for example, and one can type, 60 words a minute, one can type 50 words a minute.
Yeah.
But the one that can type 50 words a minute might be less, but they know how to use, for example, Microsoft Word. The other one is 60, but they just do it on a typewriter. Yeah. Who am I going to go for?
Yeah, all right. I mean, obviously, my answer's obvious. I'm just going to move you along because I don't know where we're going with it.
So now, I've got individuals that have similar skill sets, good at their job, years of experience, but one knows how to use AI with their work, and one doesn't.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with the person that knows how to use AI. It's as simple as that. And the person that might already have a job might be replaced by somebody that knows how to do the same job with AI. And the thing is with this, I keep telling people all the time, if you're not using AI, you are wasting your time. I've got people literally that used to take days to do certain processes.
Yeah.
Got it down to minutes. In some cases, seconds. I'm talking days down to seconds.
And what about the notion of obsolescence? So as jobs that are currently done by humans, and you've just described one, those coming down from days to seconds, those are man hours for which...
I'm not exaggerating that either.
No, I know that. Let me finish the question. Those are humans who would once have been paid for doing that stuff, and now that but that doesn't mean that they're becoming obsolescent. It means they've got time to do other stuff. How do we ride that horse? How do we know whether or not we're going to have huge swathes of humans who are un- or underemployed, or whether or not it's going to be like most technological revolutions, that nothing actually ends, it just changes?
Nothing actually ends, it just changes. People like to say, it's going to be a devastation in the job in the workforce. We've had people say that years for many different things when it comes to technology, and it hasn't happened.
No, you're right.
Changed.
The internet, everything. We were all supposed to be working, 1 hour a week now and going around on hoverboards.
But it's just a case of I've now got more time to literally do nice work, to do work I enjoy doing, to do work that benefits the business, not work that takes ages and ages to do.
What we might once have called grunt work, as it were.
Yes.
And so, that's why there is a worry in the way this story is framed, that if the number of entry-level jobs is falling by nearly a third, who's going to be the future you? Who's going to come? If that ladder you came up, and it's great, you're on that ladder now, several rungs up and having a grand old time because AI is doing a lot of the boring stuff you used to have to do yourself. But who's going to come up the ladder if it doesn't exist anymore?
I think we're looking at it from one point of view.
Go on.
At the end of the day, if I've got a business, I want to get the best for my business. I'm not your friend. I'm not your family. Even though they promote that we're a great family, blah blah blah. So if something happens, you get kicked out.
Sure.
Businesses want to make the most for their money. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. Now, if I can get 10 times the work done in 1/10 of the time, and the quality is just as good. As a business, I'm going to be doing that.
Yeah, of course they are. Of course you are.
So as an employee, you need to understand that. And don't say, I'm scared of AI, I hate AI, blah, blah. Who cares if you hate it or if you're scared? It doesn't make a difference. The business will choose the best route for them.
Yeah, no, I know that, but you're not answering my question. What happens to the ladder? What happens to the conveyor belt? What happens to the supply of non-entry level labour, the people who benefit from the administrations of AI, if the entry level roles have been replaced by AI? How do you get into an industry if the entry level has been rendered obsolescent?
You got to adapt.
Yeah, come on, man. You can't. You sound like a motivational speaker. I've got nothing against it.
Think about it.
Yeah, but my question is obviously, how do you adapt? It's a bit like I interviewed someone the other day and it was, how do we change the world? Well, you've got to have a grassroots revolution. I said, no, I know that, but what does it look like? How do you adapt?
I can't give an answer to that question.
No, I know you can't.
Each industry is different. But the thing is, in my industry, the tech industry, we have to adapt on a weekly basis, sometimes daily. If you're a lawyer, if you're in some kind of other industry that's never changed for years, never changed from when you started to where you are now, it's never changed. You are scared to adapt because you've never had to.
No, I know, but respectfully, you're giving me a lot of platitudes, but the key question here is how do you adapt? And pick any industry you want. You don't have to answer for all of them. So how do you ensure a supply of staff when you no longer have entry-level positions?
I know, maybe someone smarter than me can answer that question.
Yeah, I'll ask ChatGPT. It's 11:39. Stay safe, Daniel. Elaine is in Three Rivers. Elaine, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James. I want to talk about how it's affecting social work.
Gosh.
And it's huge.
Go on.
Yeah, believe you me, it's huge. Let me start by saying it's your program that triggered me to investigate. I think it was in 2022 when you first raised it.
Crikey, yes.
And then I started looking into it. And that was because I saw a report that says GBT at the bottom of a social work report that I got, and somebody left GBT at the bottom. Oh. So that made me realise what it was exactly. Then I started looking into some research in Victoria in Australia. A journalist carried out a huge investigation, and they found that over 100 child protection cases used ChatGPT for their case notes. Unfortunately, somebody didn't edit it, and what one of the reports actually said was the father was playing with an age-appropriate doll. I don't need to go into what that meant.
Right.
That was the huge mistake that was made, yeah?
Yeah.
And that's triggered the investigation. Following a huge inquiry in Australia, they've banned it for 2 years until further investigation. Okay?
Yes.
So that's the large language model one that the guy was talking about earlier
This is about 8 months ago. It's about 8 months ago. Just for people who don't know, a staffer's report, because I think people probably do need a bit of explanation. A doll allegedly used by the father for sexual purposes was described as an age-appropriate toy, whereas in fact something rather more worrying was going on, and it was missed because of the worker using ChatGPT to cut corners, I suppose, in ways that may have been utterly harmless, but it prompted them to ban child protection in Australia from using ChatGPT for 2 years.
Right. I am telling you this. I mean, I retired in September, but I still have a hand in social work because I'm still doing some research on this, yeah? It is widely used in the UK. Widely. Covertly.
But it's not,
and I would say it's actually...
Go on, sorry.
Let me just say, James.
I will.
Let me just say that it is being used covertly because you can actually tell by the reports. People are being diligent, but the reports sound so lifeless. They sound just like any report. You can visit 10 families and all the reports sound the same. Yeah, but they're very, very quickly done. Ofsted is aware of it, and they said they're not going to be inspecting reports for their flatness or their lack of nuance, so they're not getting involved, yeah? So that's one. But I just want to say to you, on the basis of ChatGPT, there are about 11 local authorities that developed their own, called Magic Notes. That's what they're using instead of ChatGPT, so they can legitimately use.
But it's not
magic notes.
It's not going to be a guaranteed undiluted negative, is it? I mean, it is going to have purposes that save time and make things easier. It's just as with any new technology.
I was just coming to that.
Yes.
Swindon Borough Council said it saves over 40% of their time.
Well, there you go.
In doing notes. But there's also one called Social Work Magic that proclaims it to be the answer to the social worker. I'm still doing a lot of investigation.
I can tell you what, the problem is with that is that as we investigate, you and me both, Elaine, although you sound as if you're a bit better at it than I am, it's sort of running away from us. It's sort of improving as we go. So perhaps even the problems in that grim case. So again, to clarify, because I gave myself a quick crash course on it while you were talking, what they came away with was the idea that an actual sex toy was an age-appropriate toy, and evidence that the parents who were facing charges were good parents because they were providing their child with a toy, whereas in fact it was a sex toy. So that would have been picked up by a human, but it wasn't picked up by ChatGPT, who had been ChatGPT wrote the report with the information that the human had put in, but made a mistake, and it would have been picked up had the human been marking their own homework. So there's a human error there, more in fact than ChatGPT error, but it highlights a big problem. I sense we'll talk again if you continue your research. I'm just looking now at Magic Notes, and it is directly aimed at social workers. You press record, and then let the cutting-edge AI automatically generate detailed assessments customised for your teams. So you can simultaneously see why someone like Elaine would be very worried about that, a long career in social work, and why people conscious of costs and commissioners will be attracted by it. And somewhere between the two lies the truth. And that's what we try to push towards together on this programme. It's coming up to 11:45. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I'm minded in the final hour of the programme today to return to some territory we last visited several years ago. And it is... So I can't think of many jobs that are better than mine. I mean, generally, that's true. But on a day like today, I've got state-of-the-art air conditioning in this studio. And it is literally like stepping into a pair of well-fitting slippers. It can be sweltering outside, even in other parts of the building, because it's so hot in London today. But this is one of the nicest work environments imaginable on a day like today when we're into the 30s. What's the worst? Who's got the worst? Who woke up this morning thinking, oh, God, I can't believe it. What is the worst job to do during a heat wave? You don't necessarily have to be doing it now. It could be something that you were doing back in the day. I've got a vague memory. It's more than 5 years ago. Someone was working in the dock of London, the port, in a kind of, you know, like not a wetsuit, but the like the big old frogman type, the big like metal dive suit sort of thing, and I thought, well, you're getting in the water, you'll cool down, but it didn't cool down. It was one of those weird suits that you just get hotter and hotter and hotter. I can't remember, but anyway, I'd probably give you a start for 10 as insulating lofts. The worst job to be doing today, and we may get onto that after 12. It depends what else is on the news agenda. 11:46 is the time.
James O'Brien on LBC.
11:49 is the time. There are some like big ticket questions thrown up by this, aren't there? If you know, do we need entry level jobs? And the only question I've come up with is, how do you get whatever's above entry level people if there is no entry level anymore? So if AI is replacing entry level jobs, and listen, correlation is not causation, but the number of entry level jobs has fallen by nearly a third. Apparently, since ChatGPT was launched in November of 2022. What does it mean for the future? I mean, we're talking about the present today, and there's only 8 or 9 minutes left of this segment, so we will probably remain rooted in the present. But what would it mean for the future if these jobs no longer exist? Because ChatGPT is doing them, which is great for all the callers we've had, in a way, because they're all pretty much all in a position to say it's making my life easier, it's making my business slicker, it's saving me hours and therefore money. In fact, as the head of data science at the company that conducted this research says, if you can reduce your hiring at entry level, that's just going to increase your efficiency and improve cost savings. But if nobody is coming in at entry level because you don't need them anymore, who's sitting upstairs? Who's going to be sitting upstairs in 10, 20 years' time? That may be a silly question, but I've asked it now. 10 to 12 is the time. Alex is in Brixton. Alex, what would you like to say?
Hi there, James.
Hello.
Firstly, first time ever on the radio, so it's an honour to talk to you.
Well, it's an honour to talk to you, and I'm very proud to be your first, Alex. Carry on.
Sure. You've kind of asked a really important question, that last one. Attrition is the answer. Well, I think is a big word here.
Yes.
Slowly but surely, there'll be fewer and fewer entry-level jobs.
Yes.
Slowly and slowly, there'll be fewer and fewer jobs, full stop. And those who are already running the AI now will continue running the AI, and they'll eventually retire. But there won't be any need to replace any jobs below them. You're asking, who's going to replace, if there's no junior level people now, who's going to become the more senior level?
Yeah.
But the people who are already the senior level are just going to continue rising up, if you see what I mean, and there'll be no need for anyone below them, then below them, then below them. Again, attrition being the operative word.
So what do we end up with then?
Fewer and fewer jobs.
Full stop.
Done by humans.
So what happens to the humans, Alex?
I mean, now we're asking a bigger question in a neoliberal society. I've just done a master's dissertation, so I'm a bit knowledgeable, and I work for a tech company, and I can tell you an anecdote or two about that.
Wow. So you're in the eye of the storm, so to speak, and we're kind of almost becoming turkeys voting for Christmas by the sounds of it.
So, if you just think of neoliberalism at its most simplest, right? You're trying to be as efficient as possible, make as much money as possible with as few overheads as possible.
Yeah.
If a company A has a sales team or even a customer service team, and company B has, their direct competitors, completely get rid of 75% of the customer service team and replace them with the AI.
Yeah.
They've already got an advantage. So what company A going to do? They're going to do the same. And slowly but surely, this will happen. We don't have the kind of the job security that you might have had in the 1930s. There's no strength in numbers.
But these companies are both going to run out of customers if nobody else has got jobs. Who's going to pay for their services? Who's going to pay for their services if other people haven't got jobs anymore?
To quote Rutger Bregman, taxes. And I think UBI. I was waiting to see if that was going to pop up this hour. It's appeared late, but it's here. It's when you really think about it. And again, I've just done a master's dissertation, so this is all quite fresh in my mind.
Oh, clearly, yes.
If you really think about it, what does a CEO? Why would a CEO hire any junior level people if he can use AI? With that in mind, as AI improves and improves, there's going to be fewer and fewer jobs. I mean, we're only going one direction, and remember, the number of people on this planet is going in the other direction. There's more and more people.
Well, on the planet it is, but not in a lot of the economies that we might both describe as the most violently neoliberal. But I mean, for example, we're going to need more and more carers. There are some jobs AI, well, it will be able to do everything eventually, but in the short to medium term, we're going to need more and more carers as our demographics change, and our birth rate is not keeping up with the need. So there will be odd sectors that defy what you describe, but generally speaking, the next big challenge humanity could face is the one that UBI might be an answer to: universal basic income for people who've been overloaded with initialisms and acronyms over the years. So the idea being that there is a pot of money that funds society, and we change the way in which people put in and take out to ensure that everybody is comfortable.
Yes, sorry to interrupt. To pay for by taxes is really important, but where does that money come from? Well, it comes from all the companies who are benefiting from not having to hire people anymore. It should be, one should replace the other, if you see what I mean.
Yes, I do. Has your thesis been marked yet?
No, it has not, and I'm very worried about that, but that's a few weeks away.
Well, I wish you the very best. It's a stressful time, Alex, but I'm sure you've smashed it. It's 11:55. Katie is in Linton. Before I talk to Katie, a lot of people took up my recommendation to listen to a song, one of those songs that has broken through my middle-aged lethargy and reminded me of what it was like to be young, the song Teal by Wonderhorse, who of course popped up at Glastonbury shortly after. I didn't know they were scheduled to play at Glastonbury, but I mention it because it features a Katie, and a lot of you were in touch over the weekend to say thank you for the recommendation because you ended up loving it as much as I do. Katie is in Linton. Katie, what would you like to say?
Morning, James.
Hello.
Hi. I listen to you all the time. I don't often get the urge to call, but I have today.
Good.
Listening to this.
I get you. I get them all in the end, Katie.
You do. So I was studying counselling, therapeutic counselling. I got up to my level 3.
Yeah.
And it was really, really hard to try and find a placement and to try and move on onto level 4 and 5. And one of the main reasons was that we found out that the NHS is actually endorsing counselling using AI.
Wow.
Yeah, so we spent 3 years sort of studying empathy and how you should be empathetic, and they've replaced it with a chatbot, which is a texting service. But there is rumour that it is going to become more of a focusing that they will send people on.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily be rumour, would it? I'd even go so far as to say an expectation. So at the moment, it's looking at screening and quite basic conversations that might, give coping strategies, personalised support, real low-level stuff. But as every call this hour has suggested, it might be low-level stuff today, but it will be higher-level stuff tomorrow. Has it affected your plans? Has it affected your ambitions for the future?
Yeah, I did actually stop.
Really?
Yeah, there's other little reasons
of course,
as well. But it was
are.
one of the things that I sort of thought, if I'm going to be battling AI in a few years' time, my plan was to do it into retirement. Sort of when a job that I could always do.
I'd have thought. I don't want you to change your mind, but I'd have thought that there will always be a need for human counsellors, even if AI rises to the challenge, even if it involves paying a premium. I don't think my therapy would have worked if I was doing it in front of a screen. Knew somewhere inside that I was speaking to something that's not human.
Absolutely, and it's how are they going to be able to pick up on how vulnerable somebody is?
Yeah.
People hide a lot of things. And can AI necessarily pick up on what a human can?
Also, when they say something like, just sit there and sit with that feeling for a minute, or you can tell by a face or an expression or a flinch, and eventually you can program it to recognise all of these things because it will simply be programmed by watching. So it will have watched and watched and watched so much. But I don't know, something will always feel inauthentic to me if there's no human being responding to me with empathy, which is the very essence of good therapy, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So at the heart of it. That's a shame, that. I know there were other factors as well, but I can see why you thought, what's the point in doing this schlepping? You are the living embodiment, in fact, of what I was saying about if the entry level feels like it's been closed down, and on therapeutic counselling, it's very much AI at the entry level. What happens to people who would once have made their way up the ladder if the first rungs of the ladder have been removed by the technology? That's quite profound. That's one we can put on our list, isn't it, as things to think about as the future becomes the present. And key among it also, it's just birth rate falling, a widespread presumption that this is absolutely awful news. But if we need fewer and fewer people in the workplace, then maybe it wouldn't be as bad a news as we imagine. The problem is, of course, the areas where you will always need bodies, where you always need human beings. It's coming up to 12 noon. It is very hot. I don't think that counts as news. I don't know what it's like up and down the United Kingdom, but it's hot enough to be a sort of nationwide alert. What's the worst imaginable job to be doing on a day like today?
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 3 minutes after 12, and the health services across southern Europe are under enormous pressure as this heat wave continues. 34 degrees centigrade is the figure, although Bill tells me it's just started raining in Glasgow. Listen, one of the key things about this job is that you can never please all of the people all of the time. So if we are having a conversation about a heat wave, I acknowledge that not everybody in the catchment area for this programme, which isn't even a single country anymore, is going to be caught up in it. But I'm sure your imagination is up to the job, Bill, of ignoring the rain as it trickles down your window and focusing instead upon what the worst things to do. It's our second heat wave. I don't think it's going to be our last, and it's spreading across the whole of southern Europe. So there are two thoughts I have here. The first is about today. I mean, literally. So I woke up this morning and made my way into work in the usual fashion, which involves, well, some days I get a bus and a tube, other days I get a train. And when the weather is nice, I like to walk over Waterloo Bridge. But it's too nice today. So I woke up this morning and I thought to myself, I'm not going to do that one. It was too hot to walk over. The walk from my home to my bus stop or my station this morning was hot enough to break a sweat. Just walking outside, and that was at 7:30 in the morning. So I thought, I'm not going to do a 20-minute walk across Waterloo Bridge today or any other bridge, because by the time I get to work, I'll be sweaty. I don't like being sweaty when I get to work. But in the back of my mind, I've got the knowledge that when I step into the studio, it's going to be lovely. It's going to be absolutely lovely. And I can adjust it. And Nick always has it much colder than I do, generally. Actually, they both do, Nick and Sheila, who sort of bookend me. They both generally have it much colder than I do. But either way, you can. It's probably the finest air conditioning. There'll be some areas where it's even higher, like computer sort of terminal rooms that have to stay super cool. But it's just gorgeous. And I've got that knowledge in the back of my mind. And I'm wondering what the worst is. So if this, most people in offices going to have some sort of air conditioning. I mean, there are parts of this building that are uncomfortably warm, but you don't have to stay in them. I'm just wondering what the worst job is. And I don't want you to speculate. It has to be a job you currently do or have done. Let me make that absolutely clear. I mean, this is a fairly Norfolk digital phone in already without us throwing open the phone lines to people. So, I bet it'd be a terrible time to do this. You have to be doing the job, ideally doing it today. But where is it even hotter than 34 degrees? Answer, in most places. It's nearly 30 degrees at Wimbledon. You wouldn't fancy that. I don't think anybody getting paid several £100,000 to play tennis is going to be at the front of the queue for our sympathies, but I wouldn't fancy that today. I've got a game scheduled for tomorrow at 5 o'clock, and even that's making me think twice about the health impacts. But I mean, I generally don't run around quite as hard as Carlos Alcaraz and Jack Draper and the rest of them. So I wouldn't necessarily fancy that, but it's not something that you're going to wake up in the morning and think, oh God, no. So as the heat increases, and other people won't know who has got the job today that is the one. I want a winner, by the way. This is going to be a competition. I've got a couple of thoughts in the back of my mind, but I don't want to put words into anybody's mouth. There's one that I think would take some beating, but I don't know if you're actually going to be working today at that job. We're going to find out. I want a winner. I want to weigh it up. We could do a vote, but to be honest with you, that's not always very scientific because I haven't fully worked out the technology in the studio after all these years. So I can pause things, but not enough to keep a proper count. It's not the BBC. We're far too busy. There's not enough of us to undertake that kind of scientific research. But I want to find a winner, someone that we'd all agree, the job we would least like to do today. And I wonder whether it's even more interesting if it's a job that you wouldn't mind doing at all on a normal day. But as the mercury in the thermometer climbs ever higher, and lots of people don't have air conditioning. I appreciate I'm in quite a luxurious position. But what I want you to tell me is whose job is the worst job on a day like today. And I think you'll get extra points for taking me by surprise. So some of them are pretty obvious. I've mentioned one, and I will take a call from one person insulating lofts, but you have to be doing it currently. And then the ones that we won't have thought of. So if we were taking contributions from people speculating, which we're categorically not, the one that makes us go, oh my days, I'd never thought of that. That must be absolutely hideous on a day like today. The single worst job in the country as the temperatures look set to crash through the 30-degree mark. 8 minutes after 12 is the time. 34 degrees is predicted to be the high in England today. Bill's going to keep me in touch with what's going on in Glasgow. I'm told in Cornwall things are quite pleasant, but that's not the point. The point is this. Somebody somewhere is doing the job that we will almost all agree we would most hate to be doing today, hit the numbers now, you will get through. 0345 6060 973 is the number. Brian makes me laugh. He says, I think head of music at the BBC in this heat, James, but he's talking about a very different kind of heat. But that's a fairly quick quip, isn't it? It's a fairly witty quip. And there it is. That is pretty much what I want from you. The job that would make us all go, with extra points for not being obvious. Okay, that is. I'm going to get quite a sophisticated and complicated. What do you want to call it? Like a point scoring system, which I'm going to make up as I go along, in the luxury of my state-of-the-art, multi-million-pound air-conditioned studio. I could probably turn it up so high I'd be able to see my breath. Could I, Keith? Could we get the air conditioning so cold in here that I'd be lovely. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm just drawing up some little criteria. Extra points for unexpected. I mean, that's always true on the programme, but we don't always actually hand out points in a formal fashion. And then a kind of possible text vote or some way of establishing whether or not we're so what I also want you to text me on 84850 if a call comes on and you just go, oh no, I can't do that. So that one there, all right? Because some of them will think, yeah, that's pretty rough, that's pretty hot, but it's not. You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about ChatGPT would be able to put it into words. I can't. But the thing that sort of grabs our attention in a way that we weren't expecting and refuses to let go. Kevin is in Kings Lynn. Kevin, what have you got?
Some great stories for you, James. Morning. Solar installers are up in lofts. We've got over 100 guys out all over the country as part of our network in lofts right now, and it'll be over 40 degrees in there.
Is it worse than laying insulation, though?
The insulation can cause a lot of extra problems, especially with people who've had spray foam insulation against tiles on the inside. All that heat is trapped. It's a nightmare to get out. It's a nightmare. 40 degrees
then? I mean, I was already worried that we were going to go a bit North Norfolk digital, and here you are in Kings Lynn.
West Norfolk.
I know it is. I don't want to start a civil war, but it's near enough for the joke to work, Kevin, and you know it. Why, when it is hot at night, they tell us to open the loft?
Yeah, because the heat from the house will rise, won't it, through the loft? If you've got a ventilated loft, that's all part of the passive cooling. I mean, one of the best things to do is actually put some dust sheets on the outside of your window so the glass doesn't even get hot. You leave the windows open and just get that cool breeze in and get some passive cooling going.
So, ironically, I mean, it is a fantastic weather for solar panels,
perfect,
but not for people installing solar panels. I quite like that.
They get hot as well up on the roof. Poor old Rob the roofer, #Rob the roofer. He'll be out there with his shorts on today, absolutely burning his skin, but he can't even touch the panels because they'll be so hot, the ones on the roof.
Yeah, no, that is quite unpleasant. And is there ever a point at which you'd say, leave it now?
Well, we did have a customer phone me up one morning. He was like this. He says, Kevin, I've just had to ask your guys to leave because they're costing me money. I said, beg your pardon. He says, they're here to save me money fitting solar panels, and they've bought a fan with them because it's hot, and they've asked to put the fan on, and that's going to cost me money because that's my electricity.
Oh, no.
Oh, these people walk amongst us, James.
And so they can't have a fan on today?
He couldn't have a fan on this. He was the chairman of a local village hall committee as well. He didn't get good rep from me, I'll say that much.
No, I bet he didn't. You didn't say anything. Keith said something in my ear then. You didn't say anything libelous, I hope.
No, not at all. Not at all.
There's a lesson for us all there, Keith.
James, on a very, very quick but serious point, I know we spoke before, but listen, over the years, the government, the last couple of years, the government introduced warming hubs when it was getting really, really cold for people and the cost of living, the energy prices were very high, so they opened up warm hubs at community centres and things. This is the time of the year when the village halls who've got solar and aircon shouldn't just be sitting there leaving them doing nothing. They should invite our communities in.
Have a cool hub.
And cooling hubs, instead of having hundreds of people in villages, all with their individual aircon units and fans on and sweating them.
Yes, thank you.
Hot.
Yes.
Yeah. Why don't we get them all together? When you get a load of old people and retirees in a village hall during the day, it's just like the war day, and they'll all come up with different ideas and community initiatives as well. Get people together.
Has the average village hall got air conditioning?
Most of them in Norfolk have got the solar, and a lot of them have got air-to-air air conditioning. So
all right, it's a nice idea. I mean, if it is getting really uncomfortably hot, then it would. But the problem is, you've got to get there. haven't you? It's, but anyway, there it is. So that's not going to win. I'll tell you now. I'm great. Thank you for playing, Kev. But there's no way that's going to win. I like the irony involved in the hotter it is, the worse it is for installing solar panels. And obviously the bloke who wouldn't let you turn a fan on, there's almost a whole new line of conversation to go there, like the tightest client you've ever had, or the most extraordinary example of meanness that you've put. No. That way North Norfolk Digital lies. It's coming up to 12:15. This one got me, and I think the way Joe writes this, he must have done it, although I'd rather it came in over the phone than the text. But working on a maggot farm. Serious heat, James, but also the smell of ammonia. Yeah, that would be pretty gross. Is that for fishing? Or do you use maggots for anything else? Or would it just be for... Either way, that's the kind of thing we're looking for. A job we didn't even know existed. This is the holy grail. A job we didn't even know existed that we will both find out about and decide we never, ever want to do in the course of a single phone call. That's what we're looking for after this.
James O'Brien on LBC.
16 minutes after 12. Patrolling in Iraq when it was 52 degrees centigrade in body armour and helmet. That was a tad toasty. I can't tell you my name or where I'm from. Yeah, you can. I know you might have signed the Official Secrets Act, but I don't think it covers hot weather work, does it? But anyway, 17 after 12. Wouldn't want to be in a Busby on a day like today, would you? Outside Buckingham Palace. Any more than you'd like to... And of course, if I mention a job you've done, you can ring in and tell me whether or not you think it's worse than. You say, how bad is it? Because I don't know if I'd want to be at Disneyland today, dressed as Pluto. Or, indeed, Donald Duck, or any of the other major characters. There's nothing particularly... Pluto-ish about the problem. That must be pretty hideous. And I suspect that there are very few workplaces, unless you've got a sort of shop steward from the 1970s school of trade union activism. There'll be very few places where they say, right, that's it, it's too hot, everybody home. That could be a question as well. Let's go to Chilham. How appropriate. In Kent. Will's there. Will's in Chilham. Will, what have you got?
Hi, James.
Hello, Will.
I still am a hairdresser in Canterbury.
Oh, did you forget for a minute? Have you got heat stroke? Do we need to call the authorities?
I'm only going to be hairdressing for another year.
Oh, I see. What are you doing next?
I'm about 6 weeks away from completing a degree, and I'm going to teach secondary biology.
Wow, what a fascinating career change.
Yeah.
Good for you, man. That's exciting. Go on, what made you pick up the phone today?
Basically, a number of times when hairdressing, if you don't work in an air-conditioned salon, it can get extremely hot in the middle of the day when you've got 8 to 12 hairdryers going.
Yes.
And I also have not as hot as 52 degrees.
No, it's going to take some beating, isn't it?
Above 30 in the salon, and I have an office on the top floor, and it's a 3-floor building. And it was either last year or the year before when we had that heat wave, and it hit 42 degrees, and my office hit 48 degrees.
48 degrees.
So it was like you open the door, and it's a wall that you feel like you can't move into.
A wall of heat. But you have to. What do you do all day?
Horrendous.
You can't. I wouldn't. Do people want their hair cut on this kind of weather? If they've got an appointment, I suppose they have to do it.
No, luckily we have aircon downstairs now.
Right. But back in the day, it's going to be a big thing. I think I said on the radio about 5 years ago, everyone should buy shares in aircon companies because we're going to catch up with Southern Europe, aren't we, for good or for ill? Oh, wow.
And we had. It was like when we came out of lockdown as well, when we all had to wear PPE in the salon. Masks.
God, yeah, that must have been
horrendous.
Pretty. I probably shouldn't have read out that message from the mystery soldier, should I? Because it's making us all feel a bit silly now, complaining about having to do this. 52 degrees in full body armour. But hey-ho, it takes all sorts to make the world go round. Good luck with the new life, Will. Can I ask, what made you decide to make the leap?
I've been hairdressing about 24 years, and it sounds awful, and I'm not. It's probably quite unique for a hairdresser.
Yes.
I'm quite good at my job, but I don't really care about hair.
When did you realise this?
About 3 years ago, when I was in the middle of my degree. I knew I wanted to do something new, but I hadn't realised that my passion is people.
Yeah.
and I've got maybe 25 years of work left, and I wanted to do something.
I love stories like yours. Keep in touch, won't you? I tell you what, I look forward to your first call to Mystery Hour as a fully qualified biology teacher. That'll be a moment to celebrate together. I love that. I mean, you're a bit younger than me, I think, but the that notion that do I want to do this for the rest of my working life? I think a lot of us sometimes have that thought and then quieten it down quickly because changing lanes would be such a palaver. 21 minutes after 12, Will's made the change. Pippa is in Woking. Pippa, what would you like to say?
Hi, morning. Congratulations to Will. I'm a teacher. I taught for 40 years, just retired.
Have you thought of retraining as a hairdresser? Because there's a vacancy in Kent.
I haven't thought about retraining as anything at all.
No, you enjoy you've earned it, Pippa. You've earned it. You get your feet up.
Will sounds fab. He's going to be brilliant.
Oh, I hope so. That's a lovely thing to say. Thank you.
Yeah. No, just wanted to say up till last year, 22 children in a food technology room, no air conditioning, 8 ovens on at 180 degrees.
Yeah.
Plus the catering oven. That was the big one that we use for the extra space.
Whoa.
Or 22 year 9s making quiche.
Why is quiche funny in that context? Quiche is always quite... Do they set... They never set in this. You'd have to put them in the fridge, would you, to set?
No, they go in the oven. They set in the oven. The egg coagulates, James.
Of course it does. Of course it does.
Yeah.
So 28, 30-odd quiches. 30 quiches.
22. No, 22.
22 kids, 22 quiches.
22.
22 ovens?
We only had 8.
No, 8 ovens and a big catering oven. I am paying attention, I promise. I've got no excuse. It's not even hot in here. 8 ovens, the big catering one, gas mark 6, 180 degrees, quiche Lorraine, male or female students?
Mixed.
So smelly boys.
Hang on. Lesson 2.
Yes.
Their lesson 1 was PE.
Oh.
And the lesson's so short they don't have a shower.
Oh. So they can't.
Yeah.
Ooh, I wouldn't eat that.
So I couldn't beat the lovely soldier on heat.
No, I shouldn't have read that out.
Possibly on smell.
Well, he was just walking around, to be fair.
It was just him.
How to alienate the entire military in one single phone call.
Poor him. I mean, diabolical.
You're on the list. Yeah. You're on the list. But I haven't got anything yet that's made me go, which is my dream every day on the show, is a moment where we all go, have a lovely laugh as well, Pippa. I could listen to it all day. 23 minutes after 12 is the time. Still raining in Glasgow. Thanks, Bill. Scott's in Chiswick. Scott, what have you got?
James, how you doing, bud?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, my bits are coagulating in this heat.
Thank you very much for that.
That's all right. I just thought I'd fill you in a bit. What a great laugh that lady had, by the way.
Well, didn't she just?
She was lovely. And talking about horny soldiers. Sorry, soldiers on heat.
Yeah, sweaty soldiers.
Anyway. We're dying out here. James, I've got a removals and storage business.
Yes.
And each of our vehicles at the moment are like mobile greenhouses.
Inside, of course they are.
In the back. It's ridiculous. It's like we are literally stripping layers off. We're pretty much a naked removal team at the moment.
There's a gimmick. That could
yeah, there's a couple of us you wouldn't want to see naked. But we probably wouldn't use thongs as part of our uniform.
Is there anything you can do about it? Are you park in the shade or anything like that? Or does it make no difference whatsoever?
You're at Leafy Chiswick. It'd be lovely to think I'm parked under one of the borough's trees.
Yes.
But unfortunately, not so much at the moment, mate. But the worst thing about this situation is we're going into storage. And when you go into a storage facility, it's like walking into a giant air-conditioned fridge. It's amazing. No one ever wants to leave it.
No.
And then we're leaving that, chilling off, and then going back into the van, sweating up again. It's a great workout. It's like an aerobic removal
it sounds quite Roman, doesn't it? All you need is a plunge pool and one of those scrapey things that they used to deploy at Roman baths, and you'd be laughing.
Well, if you ever need a removal done, I'm sure you've got a plunge pool in your garden. We'll come round and give you a discount, mate.
Well, that's very kind of you. Just for the record, I don't want to see any of you naked. You suggested that there was only some of you that I might not want to see naked. I want to be absolutely clear. I don't want to see any of you. Go on.
Not even a Runus who's been doing lots of press-ups and sit-ups recently to try and improve his performance.
Enough. 25 minutes after 12 is the time. Again, I wouldn't fancy that, but it's not got the factor. I mean, there's one job. Alex has... I don't know whether Alex has done this job or whether or not they are just speculating on what the worst job might be. But that is going to take some beating, and I haven't read it out yet. But yeah, removals, that's hard work at the best of times. But on a day like this, you've got, especially if you're on a 4th floor flat or something. Still not got a winner, not by any stretch of the imagination. 25 minutes after 12 is the time. A couple of phone lines are open. Maddie and Eleanor working incredibly hard today because lots of people ring in with things that are not particularly great, and politely deal with them to make sure we've got the phone line for when the person who rings in, who is doing the absolutely worst imaginable job, can actually get through to the studio. Oz tells me it's now stopped raining in Glasgow. I'm doing my best to do a kind of nationwide weather report, so thanks to Bill for telling me that it had started raining, and thanks to Oz for telling me that it has finished. I wouldn't fancy tarmacking, but there is a worse job. There's one in particular. There's several things you could do in that locale, but one thing in particular that would be particularly unpleasant. 26 after 12 is the time. Jackie's in Stuttgart. Jackie, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James. It's hot here as well. We're about 40 degrees today.
Really? It's not a competition, Jackie.
No, I hate it. No, I don't do it anymore, but I did my last year in high school to earn a bit of extra money. I decided I'd go fruit picking.
Outdoors or in a tunnel?
Outdoors.
Yeah, I think a polytunnel would be worse, though.
There weren't really polytunnels back then. It was 35 years ago. But, I managed a week of it. And then on the first day of the second week, I got sunstroke.
Really?
Yeah.
What's that like?
It's like having flu.
Oh, God,
I actually felt really cold, and I was under the duvet, and my mum came and she was like, "What are you doing? You're absolutely boiling." But wow. If it's something like strawberries, you bent double, you've got your back to the sun all day, it's on the back of your neck even if you're wearing a hat, you cannot take enough water with you for 8 hours in the sun.
No, not possible.
It's horrific.
You need to have a little trolley, wouldn't you? Yes, there are reasons why the fruit picking industry's faced all sorts of problems.
That's what I said to the producer. I said it's what made me laugh when they said, these fruit pickers and things aren't coming, we'll get people at home to do it. Not on a day like today, you won't.
We did a thing on how many applicants they got for those jobs and how many actually ended up there, but you know what my brain's like. I've forgotten what the results were, but they were pretty much as you would expect. I wouldn't fancy that. There'll be people doing that today, coming over here picking our fruit. Thank you again. It's up there, but it's not going to get the cigar. It's not going to win. This is pretty good from John, because what you've got to think of is the unexpected as well. So if you're in an excavator like he is, you're sitting in a glass box. You're basically David Blaine on wheels. Do you remember when David Blaine was in a glass box in Trafalgar Square? So you're in a glass box. You are the tomato in the greenhouse. If you're sitting in an excavator today or any sort of form of digger, 47 degrees he's got and no air conditioning. That can't be legal, can it? But, in these sort of ununionised or less unionised days, how would the foreman respond if you decided just to hang up your hard hat and go home or sit it out or go and have a cornetto? 28 minutes after 12 is the time. 03456060973 is the number that you need. I like numbers as well. 47 degrees is a good one. I've never really had... I've never had a particularly unpleasant job in the context of the weather, I don't think. I've had one, which I forgot to mention to you when we were talking about ChatGPT. I did telesales for a while, and you were very, very strictly required to stick to the script. So I can't imagine that would be a particularly difficult job to do for AI. You really had to stick to the script, and there are only about 5 different possible responses to every prompt that you would be reading from the script. So that might be an entry-level job that goes early. I've got a weird fascination with tower cranes. Andy's been in touch. So it says, got to be a tower crane, Andy, which for former CBBC viewers of a certain age has a sort of symmetry to it, that crane Andy. No, don't worry. The tower crane would be even hotter, would it, than a cab on the ground? Why? I don't know if it would necessarily, because you've got a bunch of other problems as well if you're up a tower crane. So they're on there. They're among the contenders, but no one is... I'll give you a clue. No one's underground yet. 12:30 is the time. Elizabeth Secker has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 33 minutes after 12. This is from Carr. Hello, James. I hope you're well. I can't lie. I'm very jealous of your air conditioning. I'm a roofer laying slate in Bishop Stortford. It's hot enough, the slates are hot enough to fry an egg on. I can't touch them without getting a burn, so presumably wearing gloves. And after this, I've got to torch felt on a flat roof. So that'll be me with a flamethrower in this unbearable sun, trying not to pass out. But what a nice chap you are when you add, everyone at LBC, take care to drink plenty of water and stay safe. We don't need to drink plenty of water, do we? It's about 18 degrees in here. I can tell because I can set it to fingertip control over the air conditioning. But that's harsh. I think you're actually in the lead with that, I think. You're laying slate that's too hot to touch. That's going to be worse than hairdressing. Installing solar panels, especially if you've got a bloke who won't let you turn the fan on, won't let you plug the fan in because it's going to cost you money. But I think you're in the lead because you've got that double whammy of then having to do the felt roof afterwards. So Carr is currently leading, but there's plenty of room to topple him. Philip's in Pontefract. Philip, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. Second time caller here, mate.
Welcome aboard. What have you got?
I used to be a tarmacer.
Okay. Yeah, that's unpleasant because the heat is hitting you from above and below.
Yeah, the material when it comes from the plant is about 160 to 170 degrees. Then we lay it through the paver. Then we're all stood up at the back of that paver. And I've got a photo of an infrared thermometer registering 57 degrees at the back of the machine.
That's hotter than Iraq in full body armour.
Yeah.
57 degrees, so you're walking through that?
Yeah, and that was at Ripon, just topside of Ripon, about 3 years ago.
Whoa. And do you have to wear protective kit as well, or can you do it in your shorts?
That's full PPE. That's hard hat, glasses, gloves, long sleeve vest and trousers.
57 degrees. I'm just trying to work out whether you go ahead of Carr. What would you rather do, that or flamethrower felt roof?
It's what you get used to, isn't it? I've retired now, so I'm out of that now.
I bet you're not missing it today, are you?
No, I did 32 years of that, so I'm not missing it.
Flipping heck, 32 years of time making. Can I ask you a business question?
Go on.
Why is it so hard to fix potholes?
Well, I did the bigger stuff, mate.
No, I know you did, but you must know more about it than I do.
Well, you see, it's just a temporary fix most of the time, potholes, aren't they?
I know, but why? Why can't they just do it and then
just dig all the road up? I don't know. I'm not a councilman.
We'd both make our millions if we could come up with a solution to that. Lovely call, Phil. Thank you, mate. 12:36 is the time. Katie is in Anglesey. Katie, what made you pick up the phone?
I just thought it was really relevant because you were talking about bumblebees before.
I was.
I'm a honeybee removal company.
Oh, really? You remove bees?
Yeah, we remove them from chimneys and roofs. So we're on bee suits. We're in bee suits on scaffolding, surrounded by very angry bees for 4 to 6 hours in heat or weathers. Actually, yeah.
I think you might be edging into the lead. Are you working today?
Yeah, we're removing an 8-foot beehive from a chimney.
8 foot?
Yeah.
How long does it take for bees to build an 8-foot beehive?
Well, they've been here for 30 years, but they've started to become a problem. They're coming out through the light fittings and they're coming... So the owner knew?
The owner knew and didn't mind?
No, she actually liked the bees living up there.
She doesn't get any honey out of them or anything like that?
No.
I know that was a stupid question, but there's people listening who wanted me to ask it, so don't think less of me. All right?
We've had sillier questions, don't worry.
I'm sure you have. I don't quite get that. I mean, Lordy Lord, 8 foot high. So how many bees do you reckon there are in there?
Between 60 and 100,000, roughly.
Give or take. And you will cut the whole thing out and put it in pieces into boxes and then take it somewhere else, or are you going to kill them, or what are you going to do?
No, we don't kill bees.
That's why you're called a bee removal country and not a bee exterminator.
We need our bees. We've got specialised bee hoovers that hoover them straight into a beehive, and then we remove the wax.
Fantastic. I'm just going to pause for a moment to enjoy the thought of a specialised bee hoover. My first band was called the Specialised Bee Hoovers. I played drums for the Specialised Bee Hoovers. Happy days. And so carry on. You hoover the bees into an actual beehive.
Yeah, and then we remove the wax, and then we rebuild the chimney or the roof, or we take out bedroom walls. We've recently just removed quite a large colony from the chimney at the crematorium, which was interesting.
Oh my days! Yeah, we better not go there. And is it your own company?
It is, yeah. It is.
What first drew you to removing bees, Katie?
There was nobody out there that actually does what we do, and I was fed up of people killing bees, so I thought do something about it.
That's lovely, actually. Do you want to? I've lost my ChatGPT monologues on the power of bees. To be fair, they were bumblebees, not honeybees, but you know. Certainly on the pollination side of things, they both count, don't they?
Thank you.
I could talk to you all day, but I'm just struck, and I know you can't be indiscreet because your client was comfortable with having the bees in her chimney until they reached a sort of saturation point when they started coming through the light fittings. That's just extraordinary. I think you might be winning. So what is you're not in your suit now because I can hear you. So what is the longest period you have to stay in the suit to do a job like today's job?
It's usually average removal takes about between 4 and 8 hours.
And you can't take it off in all of that time because you might get stung. So 4 to 8 hours. Gloves, what do you wear on your hands?
Marigolds, very sweaty. I have prune hands.
I bet you do. Well, all the time or just marigolds?
It's very, very hot. So, but you've got a handful of bees and wax and honey, and it's not the most glamorous of jobs.
But you love it, don't you? I can tell.
I do.
Absolutely love your work. That's a really lovely call, and you go straight into the lead. I don't suppose you've got temperatures with you, but it doesn't matter because you've got the added... You get so many added dimensions to it. Actually, just before you go, I should confess, I didn't really play drums in the specialised bee hoovers. I just hummed along, Katie. That's just awful. That's from Chantel. I stole it. I stole it, or am I just passing on responsibility to someone? There we go. So in the lead now. Specialised bee removal on a day like today. It's going to take some beating. VJ's in Colindale. VJ, what would you like to say?
Wow. Okay, what a great session you got going. So
get on with it.
Okay. So I worked for the UN in Sierra Leone.
Yes.
On the Ebola crisis, and I had to wear a PPE suit in the centres when we were looking after Ebola patients.
Yeah.
It's extremely hot outside.
This is Sierra Leone for the World Health Organization. Yeah, that's pretty unpleasant.
Yeah. You can't take the suit off because if you did, you would catch Ebola.
What's worse? What's worse? Here's a phone in. What would you rather, getting stung by a bee or catching the Ebola virus?
Bee. By far. Well, Ebola destroys you. It destroys all your lungs and everything. Oh, you're walking dead.
Yes. I it was kind of a rhetorical question. And that's the worst, is it? That's the worst you've ever done?
No. Then I also, growing up, my father had a chicken farm up in Leicestershire, and so if you look after chickens, especially day chicks, on a hot weather like this, you're supposed to have fans, and the fans one week died, and we were left with the 10,000 dead birds that we had to clear out before the next lot came in. So me, my dad, and my uncles in the heat, looking after stinking dead. I just have something about stink and death.
Why did they pass away, all the chickens? What happened? Something broke, did it?
Yeah, the fans in the shed broke.
It like a power cut sort of thing?
Power cut, yeah.
10,000... Forgive me for making light of this tragedy, but is there such a thing as a specialised chicken hoover?
No.
Just you?
I just so wish there was.
That would have saved your day, wouldn't it? It would have saved your bacon. Hang on.
KFC would have made a fortune. Anyway,
so hand on heart, what was worse? Dealing with Ebola in Sierra Leone or dead chickens in Leicestershire?
Ebola.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fairly obvious conclusion. Well, I mean, I'm not doing rounds of applause this hour, but if I was, you'd get one. I think you edge into the lead. I think dealing with Ebola virus in Sierra Leone in full PPE is probably worse than removing bees from an 8-foot beehive in a chimney in... Well, I can't remember where she was now. Thank you, VJ. Lovely stuff. You see, this is why we do it. If you build it, they will come. So that is a late leaders now, but still challengeable. There's one job. I will reveal it at the end, but if no one rings in who's actually done it. But there's one job. I don't know whether it would be worse in the hot weather. That's the only problem with it. It would be a disgusting thing to do on any day of the year. But on the hottest day of the year, would it be immeasurably worse? Or would it actually be... I don't know. You'll find out what it is before 1 o'clock if I remember. Richard's in Norwich. to continue the East Anglian theme of this hour. Richard, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Long-time listener and now a second-time caller.
Well, thank you.
James, my job is a firefighter. So obviously, on days whenever we get involved in fire, it's always particularly hot. But today,
Thanks for that, mate. Thanks for that, Ed.
I'm not actually ringing out about me today because my partner, she's also a firefighter.
Okay.
And today she's gone off to our training centre, our hot fire training centre, where basically she'll be sitting in a container, a normal sort of ISO container that you'd see on the back of a lorry.
Yeah.
It's plonked on the floor. What they do is they go in and they put a big pile of wood in at one end and they set fire to it.
Right.
Then we go in and we shut the doors behind us and we sit and we watch the flames and see how they develop and see how the fire develops within the compartment.
Why?
Probably 20 minutes to half an hour. It teaches us about fire development and fire
Tactics
behaviour.
and things like that.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, first of all, thank you for what you do. But second of all, isn't that going to be hot every day?
Well, it is hot every day, yeah. They regulate the temperature to about 300 degrees.
So it doesn't matter that it's a hot day then?
Well, it does, because it's when you come out. Because when you sit in there and it's 300 degrees, obviously you're wearing your thick boots and your thick jacket and your thick trousers and, you know, the thickest clothes you ever have to wear. And normally if you come out of it and it's a winter's day, you come out and you can peel all that kit off quite quickly and you can get some kind of cooling, some surface cooling to your skin. When you walk out of there on a day like today, you're walking out into 30-odd degrees of beating sunshine. It's really not nice.
No, that's not nice. I can see that. I don't think it overtakes working with Ebola virus in Sierra Leone in full PPE.
That was...
you'd have been, if you'd got on half an hour ago, you'd be in the lead. That's the nature of the game, mate. Them's the breaks. Them's the breaks.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'll take the defeat.
But no, it's a creditable contribution. I love that. And just briefly, because I'm stupid, why is it called the hot fire training? As opposed to
behaviour training. It was a slip of the tongue. We used to call it hot fire training, and then, like as you pointed out, somebody said, "Well, all fire's hot." So we now call it fire behaviour training.
Sticking his hand up at the back. Excuse me, sir. Why is it got? Yeah, okay, that'd be me. Nice one, Richard. I hope she gets home. I'm sure she will. Gets home safe and sound. Well, I tell you what you should do. A little bit of romance in your life. Get a couple of strawberry mivvies in the freezer for when she gets home.
We've got the iced lollies and everything ready to go, mate.
That's what you need. The problem with all the newfangled ice creams is that they're not actually that cooling on a hot day. So I don't know how new they are, but I got the Ferrero Rochers the other day in the freezer section at Morrison's. I thought I saw an advert. It worked. The treat. I saw an advert. I said to Mrs. O'Brien, Ferrero Rocher ice creams, yes please. So you buy them. And of course, if it's really, really hot, you don't want a Ferrero. You want a kind of... My mate Enzo, who's an ice cream man, usually to be found in the car park at the garden centre in Sion, in Isleworth, next to, what's it called? Sion House. Yeah, their big stately home. He gave me a cherry brandy one the other day. You remember those from childhood? The ones that have almost got like an almondy taste? That's what you want. You want a solid... ice fruit lolly you don't want to be messing around with a Ferrero Rocher or a Magnum or anything like that. You want fruity ice or indeed icy fruit. If you are in that neck of the woods, do say hello to Enzo. He'll be very busy today, I imagine. 12:47 is the time.
James O'Brien on LBC.
How many people are currently looking at specialised bee hoovers or bee vacuums on the internet? It's just me? No. Loads of people. They found one called the BVAC. It's actually called BVAC. The BVAC, now with an optional viewing port. So imagine that, sucking up all the bees and then keeping them safe and happy and putting them in little mini hives and then relocate. What a lovely job Katie's got. You could get an automatic bee sweeper, but I'd want the vac. But I haven't got any bees, so it'd be a stupid thing to buy. Don't buy me a bee vac, all right, as a present, in case you're thinking of that. I don't need one because I haven't got any bee-based problems. Keir Starmer has all sorts of problems, none of them currently bee-based, but he hopes to have seen some of them off with an imminent reframing of the welfare bill. Natasha Clark, LBC's political editor, joins me to, first of all, remind me when it happens and who will be doing it, and secondly, to perhaps reveal or speculate on what's likely to be in it.
Yes, James. So you're right. Keir Starmer is still in pretty much a huge headache at the moment over his welfare bill. The vote on that we're expecting tomorrow afternoon. So we will then reveal basically how many MPs are going to potentially vote against these controversial welfare reforms. And Keir Starmer last week in number 10 had a big climb down on this. They basically said everybody who is on PIP currently, anybody who's claiming personal independence payments won't be affected by these changes. They won't come in until next year, November 2026. And they will announce a review of the PIP system as well. That's something that campaigners have been calling for a long time. Today the government have released a little bit more detail about what that's going to look like. There's been some more detail that's been published by the DWP today on an impact assessment, essentially, of the poverty strategy. Now, you remember before, lots of MPs have been pointing to this stat, James, that 250,000 people will be pushed into poverty as a direct result of some of these changes. Now, today reveals that there will only be 150,000 people pushed into poverty as a result after those changes. So still quite a lot of people are going to be affected by this poverty.
And quite a lot of rebels are going to be on. Do we know? Have we got any way of measuring numbers?
So 30 to 50 is what we're hearing at the moment.
Okay.
It's still a bit unclear whether they're going to vote against the government or abstain and just not vote at all. Obviously, that's the lesser of the two options. Number 10 today will not say what happens to those MPs who, if they vote against it.
Why not?
Well, I think because they know the scale of the rebellion and they know how MPs are feeling about this.
So if they said we'll suspend anyone, it may have the opposite effect.
I think so.
Or
I think
encourage les autres.
I totally believe on an issue like this, where MPs feel so strongly, it would be actually counterproductive to say, if you vote against this, we'll lose the whip. But equally, the idea of potentially up to 50 of Keir Starmer's own MPs voting against him is a pretty big deal. And we shouldn't forget that he's less than a year into his job, and still lots of MPs believe that these welfare reforms are the wrong thing to do.
They do indeed. So it's all happening today.
So this is today that's been the government are releasing more details about what they're doing,
When's
the changes,
the vote?
and
Tomorrow?
The vote is tomorrow afternoon.
Tomorrow afternoon, so not on my watch,
Not
but
on your
you'll be
watch.
following it very closely.
Exactly.
I haven't seen you since PMQs last week. We missed the opportunity to laugh at Kemi Badenoch for claiming that Keir Starmer went to a NATO summit in order to avoid her at PMQs.
I'm not quite sure it was that deep, actually, Kemi. I'm sure.
I didn't imagine that or dream it. That was the claim. That he was trying to avoid her, so he went to a NATO summit as one of the key members of NATO.
I don't get this argument from politicians they shouldn't be going to NATO summits.
I've never heard it, except from her.
From her. I mean, obviously, the MPs that are still in Parliament and have been talking for the last few weeks over these welfare reforms are a bit upset that Keir Starmer hasn't been around the last few weeks to really sell it to them, and that is a fair point. And number 10 saying today, lots of conversations going. The Prime Minister is having lunch with MPs in the tea room every day and talking to colleagues. But
you drew my attention on Friday to a rather excellent interview in The Observer, the New Look Observer, which, for the record, is well worth the money at the moment. It's well worth the price of entry, especially because the Sunday Times is full of sad old men wanging on about how awful the 21st century is. I really enjoyed The Observer this weekend, but you drew my attention to Tom Baldwin's piece, Keir Starmer's biographer, of course, and it was a strange piece, a very good piece of journalism, but there was a plaintive air to it at times, and Keir Starmer saying, I have been distracted by A, world events, and B, the fact that his sister-in-law was at home when his old house, which she now rents, was firebombed.
Yeah.
And there are live criminal cases unfolding, but I was struck by the fact that we perhaps hadn't paid as much attention to that as we should have done.
Yeah, I think the argument that you're distracted by things on the world stage is probably one that doesn't quite wash as much. Of course, there's lots of things happening in the world, but there always is, and there's always things to be talked about overseas. I understand, of course, the Prime Minister wants to be focusing on Iran and the NATO summit and the G7 summit. Of course he does, but I think as soon as that statement was published on Tuesday, number 10 should have, alarm bells should have been ringing in government that Keir Starmer is going to need to say something about this, and it took them a good 48 hours before they started to really wake up to that. But you're right, that interview with Tom Baldwin that the Prime Minister did, where he was talking about the fact that I've got other things on, and he admitted his failures in there, which is a big thing for any politician to do, to say, actually, you know what, I shouldn't have said those Islands of Strangers comment in that immigration speech, and other things that about my first year have not been perfect. And actually, I really respect and admire people that stand up in public life and say I've got it wrong. But yeah, on the specifics of his sister-in-law, was it? It was at the house at that time. Yeah, of course, a very scary time, and just really another reminder of the perils and really difficulties of being a politician in the public life.
Shouldn't exist at all, but anyway, the bit that moved me was the explanation of why he went to Leeds to clear out his late brother's.
Yeah, he didn't want anybody else to do it, and he wanted to basically do it himself.
His late brother had problems in life. Apparently, that's when we took a call. I don't know whether you were here that day. Someone who'd been at school with him and remembers a fight he was in. He remembers Keir Starmer was in a fight with another lad, and it was quite tasty. And it said, what was it about? And we didn't know. But apparently he would often get into fights with people who'd been rude about his brother Nick, who had special educational needs. It's still the case that if he hears someone using words like thick, he gets quite angry about it. But so his brother Nick had ended up in Leeds, but his house was in a bit of a state, and he didn't want anyone else to clean it. He said, I owe it, if I get quite moved by this, even in the recalling of it, I owe it to my brother to do it myself. So he's there on his hands and knees scrubbing a toilet while, Donald Trump's on hold. Yeah. Not quite, but anyway, it's a really good read and well worth having a look at. Natasha, thank you. I'm going to crack on because I'm going back to King's Lynn. Twice in one day. You are really spoiling us because Roy is there. That's Roy in King's Lynn, not Roy's of Wroxham.
No. Roy from King's Lynn.
Roy of King's Lynn. What have you got for me, Roy?
Right. The black bin where all the rubbish goes in, not recycled.
No, the actual rubbish.
Yeah, the rubbish. Where they take it, or where they used to take it up to about 5 years ago, was a centre as a building like an aircraft hangar.
Just a massive shed.
Yeah. They send it. First of all, they send it through what they normally describe as a factory to sort it, to get the metal out. And you've never seen so many footballs and balls bouncing around. Anyway, then they shoot it into this building.
Right.
Now, this building, on a good day, is 45 degrees, and the humidity. Now, you talk about temperatures. The important thing is humidity.
That's what you're breathing.
The humidity was 90. So, and I'm an engineer. So when the machine's in there, they have machines, they put it in one end, and they turn it, and they send it down the building, turning it with these machines. It takes 7 weeks to rot it down. We have to take gas detectors in with us, because if they go off, you're out, because there's all sorts of gases. You couldn't last in there very long. So it was everything in the black bin that could be rotted down.
And you'd have to go in there if a machine broke?
To fix a machine.
On a day like today?
On a day like today. It was bad enough in the winter.
Clearly.
It was in the summer, that'd get up to 50 degrees in there.
And it stinks, right? It stinks to high heaven.
Oh,
absolutely rancid.
Gas. Where they
we've got a winner.
When they feed it into this building, it's still kind of just fresh out of the bin, so some of it is still, dry, so it makes a dust. And the whole inside of the building is sweating.
I've got it. I can picture it, but I'm late for the handover. From one person with a really easy job to do on a day like today to another person with a really easy job to do on a day. But I think you might be the winner. That is justice. Why don't you do it anymore in a sentence, Roy? He's gone. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on Catch Up on both Global Player and the LBC app, where you can stay up to date on the top stories and opinion, put your news categories in the order you want, pause and rewind live radio, and listen to a range of podcasts. A quick shout to Dave and the Pigeons, but I haven't got time to read out the story. You probably win on the texts. Download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Coming up at 4 on LBC, it's Tom Swarbrick. But now it's time for Sheila Folk.
James O'Brien on LBC.